This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Hope you had a great weekend. Welcome to a Monday edition to kick off NHL Draft Week here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. Big Bomber win to move to 2-0 on the season. We'll get all over that. Josh Frey-Sam of the Winnipeg Free Press is going to jump on first today. And then a big week for the Winnipeg Jets. Coming off the Friday announcement that Jonathan Toews is returning to the NHL here in his hometown of Winnipeg, Mike McIntyre will join us to discuss all of the Jets and NHL stories heading into the draft in LA on Friday. And speaking of that draft, we're going to lean on a bunch of our favorite experts today. Scott Wheeler of The Athletic jumps on to talk about the landscape of NCAA junior hockey right now, how these changes are affecting this draft, how it might affect, these leagues in the next couple years, as well as where these prospects play, as well as the top players in the draft that we expect to go off the board in the first period. Scott will join us a little later on today on the program. We'll also hit the Coolbet lines. And hey, by the way, speaking of Coolbet, tonight, our WST Poker Series continues. And this one, folks, is the WST Coolbet Open Qualifier. Now, it'll run as a normal tournament, but the top two finishers tonight are going to get tickets into the final, where the winner of that tourney is going to get a trip. Pat laid it all out to Estonia to play in the Coolbet Poker Open. It'll be an amazing, amazing trip. So 8:30 tonight is when we're starting. If you check my Twitter at Hustlerama, you'll see a tweet with the details. But basically, you want to go to Coolbet, you want to click on poker and download the poker software, and then make sure you're registered. You'll get a handle if you haven't played there beforehand. And then when you're in, click on tournaments, and then there's a little magnifying glass. Just put in WST in the search, and it'll pop up. Get registered. Join us tonight. There's a $100 bounty on my head, $100 bounty on Remis. And breaking news, Jeff Hamilton, the Hammer, my tag team partner on CFL 110, which will have a new episode tomorrow, will also be in tonight. So hopefully we'll see you. The tourneys are always fun, but with the added bonus of the 2 spots in the final tournament for the Coolbet Poker Open, I hope you will join us tonight. We'll see you at 1:30 or 8:30, I should say, tonight. Talk about that a little later on today on the program as well. Hey, just before we bring in Michael Remis, huge thanks to the sponsors that make WST happen each and every day. Of course, our partners at Coolbet, Princess Auto, Prairie Toyota, Ben Dealers, Ben Moss, St. Vital Dental Center, Rollies Transfer, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club, F Apparel, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug, Breezy Bend, Assiniboia Downs. ASD's back tonight with a Monday card. And of course, the Winnipeg Goldeyes, who won their 4th straight series, wrapping it up yesterday at home. They're on the road for a quick 3 and then back at home on the weekend through Canada next week. So lots of opportunity to get out to the ballpark to see the Goldeyes as they continue to push their way back into the thick of things in the American Association. Why not question of the day for Not AutoCorp? We'll also have fan feedback for fansfirst.ca. Let's get this going. Welcome to everybody in chat. And welcome to you, Michael Remis. How was the weekend?
Yeah, good weekend. Is a hot one out there on Saturday. Yesterday, some much-needed rain. Took in the Bomber game. Sea Bears had a win Friday. They did not win yesterday, so their winning streak was snapped to play home next Friday. But yeah, solid weekend, Huss, as it is now officially summer.
Yeah, that's right. We've had the longest day of the year Summer is here right now, and there was some crazy weather in and around the city. Well, particularly south of us. I joked that we're going to do a WST segment sometime, Winnipeg Storm Talk, and get one of my favorite storm chasers on. But oh my God, the size of some of those tornadoes down in North Dakota, and some tornado warnings yesterday in the very southeast portion of the province. But it's cool right now. Not even getting to 20 degrees today, but it looks like it's going to be nice tomorrow. 25 and mainly sunny, and then some cloud, but pretty nice. Although it does look like we've got some rain coming up on the weekend. Hopefully that changes before we get there. Listen, we should get to the Bombers and, of course, the latest Jet news. But just right off the hop, Remo, did you catch Game 7 of the NBA Finals last night?
I did. I was all hyped for Game 7. Very excited. How do you not get excited? Game 7, NBA Finals. But it was a bit of a dud with, you got to feel bad with Halliburton. It looked like an Achilles injury there in the first half. And when your best player goes down, it's, they hung in there. Credit to Indiana for getting as far as they did, hanging there over the first half. But OKC, who was dominant all year, pulled away in the second half. So it was a bit of anticlimactic. And I thought the celebration, I don't know if they were bummed that Halliburton got injured or what, but there was that tweet going around contrasting the Panthers celebration and the OKC celebration. And I was even in a text here with my friends, like, these guys aren't even excited to win here. Like, maybe they thought they were going to win in 4 and it went to 7.
I thought the same thing. And to be honest, OKC has the rep of being like this crazy building and the fans are so nuts. Maybe this is the case that, okay, it's the NBA Finals, it's Game 7, and the regular fans were priced out. And all those tickets were bought up by people that, they all seem to be wearing the blue shirts.
Yeah.
All I know is that this could very well be the start of a dynasty. Just checked at Coolbet. OKC 2-1 already to win next year's championship. And with all of their picks and their young players, I think we might want to get used to it. But yeah, the Halliburton injury was brutal. And he started off so hot too. I mean, he'd hit 3 of his first 4 shots for 3-pointers. They had the lead. They were feeling it. And then that really took the life out of the building. And credit to Indiana for hanging in there. They had a 1-point lead at the half, but then it was all OKC in the third quarter, and basically a coronation in the fourth. And listen, just speaking of great Canadian athletes, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander puts an exclamation point on the greatest season ever for a Canadian player. He led the NBA in scoring. He was first team All-NBA. He was the NBA regular season MVP. He was the Western Conference Finals MVP. He won the championship and is the NBA Finals MVP. And it'll be pretty tough to beat a year like that moving forward for anybody, regardless of passport, because this was Shai's year. And it seems like the dawn of this OKC dynasty that many people expect is officially underway.
Yeah, and I just want to give a shout out to all the Seattle basketball fans who are probably throwing up when Clay Bennett went on stage as the owner to accept the trophy. I was like, oh, that guy's still around. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the 4th player in NBA history to win MVP, scoring title, and Finals MVP. The other 3, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, and Shaquille O'Neal. Steve Simmons putting that out there. I mean, that is some list to be on if you needed historic context on what we witnessed this season from OKC and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And, the 2 Canadians, him and Lou Dort as well on the team. I wonder what it means for the next international competition with Canada's a bit of a disappointing result at the last Olympics.
Listen, I mean, if you're big into Canada hoops, I mean, this was a dream series. I mean, you had 2 important players on our national team on both sides. That Benedict Mahurin really had a big game, especially in the second half after Halliburton was out. They leaned on him quite a bit. There's Nembhard, and then Lou Dort and Shai leading the way for the OKC Thunder. So congratulations to all the Canadians, but particularly SGA for making history last night with the OKC Thunder. But as they say, we'll get to some of this Jets news in a minute, and Mike's going to join us. But man, Nice night at the office for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on Saturday. Zach Collaros gets back out there with his team after having to hit the treadmill for 20,000 steps during the home opener when Chris Streveler played in his absence, Remis. And another really nice performance from offense, defense, special teams, and the Bombers handily beat the Jeremiah Masoli-led BC Lions 27-14 in the game to move to 2-0 in the season before they host Edmonton on Thursday back at Princess Auto Stadium.
Yeah, this game was never really close. The Bombers got out to the 7-0 lead in the first quarter with Zach Collaros' 200th touchdown pass, and what a beauty it was over the shoulder to Dalton Schoen. Wondering about that connection for this year, showed off early, and the Bombers took a 17-3 lead into the second half. I think the offense got off to that quick start, but sputtered a little bit in the second and third quarters. Collaros finishing 18 of 25, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did have 2 interceptions, one of those coming at the end when the game was over. But this defense, I was talking to Derek Taylor to start the season. He was raving, saying, hey, they could be better than last year. And I know they've only played one team so far, but 2 different quarterbacks making life very difficult. Masoli with the 2 picks. It was Jamal Parker who had the fumble recovery touchdown, had an interception. They had another fumble recovery on special teams. The defense generating 4 turnovers overall, and really limiting BC on offense, who did have some short fields and weren't able to convert. So shout out to the defense. Really showed up in this one, and the offense did what they needed to do. O'Shea didn't seem too thrilled about the win after the game. Thought they could have cleaned a couple things up. He said, hey, we got the win and got out of there, but he feels there's room for improvement.
Yeah, I mean, listen, 2 games into the season, there was, certainly some things that you loved about the game, and and we'll hear from O'Shea in just a second, a couple things that you'd like to clean up a little bit. I mean, Zach had a real strong game. They had a nice start. He did throw a couple picks in the game, including an underthrow on a deep one to Dembski. And then there was in the kind of a risky throw under pressure into double coverage. But the offense was effective. I think they probably would agree they left some points on the board. But overall, for Collaros' first game, he looked good. Dalton Schoen looked great. No Brady Oliveira, of course. Matthew Paterson kicked things off and had sort of a nice start. But that faded a little bit. And then, of course, Quentin Cooley came in, 7 carries for 42 yards. Paterson had 42 yards as well on 11 carries. And this Cooley, he didn't play a ton, Reem, but what a unique frame on Mr. Cooley. I mean, he essentially looks like a hot water tank with legs. Difficult to tackle. He was, every time he got hit, he'd probably get an extra couple yards. It did seem like they had some nice depth behind it. And of course, Gabe Wallace started at left guard. The line I thought was good. They allowed just 1 sack overall. But to me, this was I was most impressed with the defense, to be honest. And I thought Jamal Parker is one of the stars of the game. You mentioned he had the pick, he had the return for the touchdown, but was really impactful. But I'll tell you who stood out to me. Bonds, 24, the corner. We were wondering, okay, how's this team going to look without Ford, who went for the big money to Edmonton? Bonds had, and I'll look forward to get Josh's take on this, his positioning going up against an elite receiver like Justin McInnis, I thought was just absolutely phenomenal. And, we kind of said this going into the season, Reem, the first 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games of the year, we're going to be introduced to some new players that are not household names amongst Bomber fans. And by the time we get to midfield in the Labor Day Classic and Banjo Bowl, these guys are going to be mainstays. And Parker was already there, in my opinion. Bonds is there after that. I thought a breakout performance last night. Not that he didn't do a good job in week number 1.
Yeah, and Terrell Bonds came in last year for his first season. There's a really nice feature on him on BlueBombers.com. Almost a year ago today, written by Ed Tate. He's grew up with Dietrich Nichols, and he said last year coming to the CFL was the most fun that he's had as a pro. He had signed as an undrafted free agent with the Ravens. He'd been in the XFL, but the Bombers have found corners who Alford was one that comes to mind. Dietrich Nichols as well when they had that huge camp a couple years ago. So this defense looking very strong, shutting down Rourke in the Bombers week 2. And then week 3 of the CFL season last week, confusing with that first week bye, shut down Masoli. So we'll see how they look Thursday against the Edmonton Elks, who are winless, and Trey Ford. We do have to give a shout out. We haven't mentioned the play of the game. Tua Ellie, the touchdown catch. And I was watching that. He's rolling up. Oh, he's open. Hit him. And he waited along. You're like, oh, did he miss the window? But what hands by the big man to secure that 5-yard touchdown. That was the play of the game right there.
Listen, the thick 6 by the Bombers, putting that one in. I got thinking, Jason Hogan's now had 2 games as the offensive coordinator of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Both have been against his former, I guess technically boss in some ways, in Buck Pierce. The thick 6, when you're throwing it to Tui Ely for a touchdown when you're up by a lot, I don't know. Is that sticking it a little bit to their old buddy Buck last night? Anyways, it was fun. I'm here for it. Let's do that every game if we can. But yes, the big man touchdown on the line, definitely a highlight of it. You mentioned, let's hear from Coach O'Shea. This is what Mike had to say after the Bombers' 27-14 win in BC on Saturday night, head coach from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Obviously happy about the win. Certainly not happy the way we played. Or I'm not happy with the way I managed the game at the end of the half and at the end of the game. I could have made sure we did things a little differently and not put ourselves in jeopardy like that. You hate to have to trot out your hands team at the end. It's it's a tough football play. So I'd like to see us better in those areas. But sure, coming on the road, winning. It's fun, and we'll enjoy it. The coaches maybe not as much.
And Zach's first start of the season.
Yeah, so happy for him. Football gets taken away, and it doesn't matter what for. It hurts the guys. So to see him back playing, it's just doing something he loves to do and being in a spot that he feels really comfortable at. So I'm more excited for the man.
All right, so there's Coach, obviously happy to get Zach back out there, happy for the win, but as he just mentioned, still lots of work to be done heading into Thursday night's game. By the way, Bombers have announced another great crowd coming to Princess Auto Stadium. Over 30,000 seats already sold. Thursday night, the place to be will be the Princess Auto Stadium. So make sure, grab your ticket so you're not left on the outside looking in. Here's one more clip from Coach O'Shea. He talked about the play of his defense.
Yeah, pretty stifling. Again, I thought they made some plays. Obviously, everybody wants plays back, but basically three takeaways, couple down deep, so took points off the board, which is a nice response for sure.
Coach, I think it's 8 turnovers now through 8 quarters in football here. You used to talk about how pleased I imagine you are with that and how critical that's kind of been to the first two victories here.
Yeah, once again, we took points off the board down deep, surefire points. So to have them respond like that, really, really odd first quarter, only 2 drives, right?
Yeah.
The 7.5, 7:45, 8 minutes each or whatever it was. So it's odd. And then the defense settled in and like I said, they made their plays, which was nice. A couple nice interceptions.
All right, there's Coach O'Shea on the defense. And Remo, he did mention how weird that first quarter was. The Bombers taking it on a lengthy drive and then BC doing the same thing. And, we got to the second quarter and both teams had only had 1 possession. That literally never happens in the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, that is strange. That's just the way that it worked out. I don't know much more, but yeah, credit to the Bombers for coming out with the win the way they did. 2-0, 1 of 3 2-0 teams in the league, and winning the season series over BC, as they will not meet again this year, even though they are in the same division. Getting out of the way early with the back-to-back.
Listen, we're going to get back into the Bombers in just a minute when Josh Frey-Sam joins us. we do have a trade to announce in the National Hockey League. Trevor Zegras is on his way from the Ducks to the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for Ryan Poehling, another former first-round pick, the 45th overall pick, and another draft pick. So Trevor Zegras gets a new start with the Philadelphia Flyers. But let's face it, all weekend long, the biggest story, certainly around these parts, was more reaction to the announcement that Jonathan Toews will be signing a contract with the Winnipeg Jets on the 1st of July. Let's hear from Darren Drager. He jumped on TSN 1050 a little earlier and was asked about the expectations for Jonathan Toews coming into the fold with the Jets for next season.
Jonathan Toews isn't dipping his toe back in the NHL pool and saying, yeah, I think I'm going to be able to play. No. That's why he took as long as he did to get himself healthy again, to go through the rigors of training to a place where he knew that he could perform. Now, just based on his age, he's not going to be what he once was when he and Patty Kane were starring the Chicago Blackhawks and winning Stanley Cups. But he is still going to be a very impactful player, in my opinion. And that's why when he first acknowledged that he was planning on playing in the NHL next year, and everybody said, oh, he'd be a great fit in Toronto, he'd be a good fit in Colorado. Hey, Tampa Bay's got to like him. And yes, of course, Winnipeg, because that's his hometown. I lobbed it out, well, he's the two center that Winnipeg has been looking for.
All right, so there's Dregs. Very bullish on Jonathan Toews coming back in. I mean, I think as we've said, there's some people that are putting him in at the 2C now. There's some people that are putting him in at the 4C now. I think reality is somewhere in between, and we will see just exactly what Jonathan Toews looks like coming in training camp. But a player that will help the team on the ice, but also in so many other ways. An exciting addition for Winnipeg, and that certainly was had a lot of conversations over the course of the weekend about Toews coming to the Winnipeg Jets. Now, the timing of it was interesting. I mean, they didn't have to announce anything now. You can't actually sign the deal until July 1st. And we had speculated that maybe the fact that they went and made this move and announced it, they were hoping that maybe this could help them with a certain pending UFA and Nikolai Ehlers. Elliot Friedman touched on that on 32 Thoughts. Here's what Friedge had to say about the Jets, hoping that the Toews news might be a benefit for them in negotiations to keep Nikolai Ehlers in the peg.
Now, I believe that part of their pitch to Ehlers was, hey, Toews is here and he could play with you. I don't know if that's going to work. I understand why everybody is skeptical. Toews hasn't played in a long time. I just think if you're committed, like one thing that Gabriel Landeskog proved to me this year is, like, first of all, there were people who thought he was never going to play again. And then even when he came back, they were like, can he skate 2 days in a row? There were people shocked he could play back-to-back games that first weekend in the AHL. They didn't think it was possible. And then he played in the NHL and he looked pretty good. Like after Gabriel Landeskog this year, I think if you're serious and you're committed, I think it's possible.
All right, so there's Elliot Friedman on that. And Reem, we should bring this up right now. In addition to the Jets putting out a bunch of content, being ready to go with this, and I think really getting Winnipeg fans excited about the notion of a guy with the incredible resume of Jonathan Toews deciding to resume his career here in Winnipeg, it seems like Jonathan Toews is pretty fired up. And bring up this Instagram post if you can that he put out on his site yesterday or over the course of the weekend. I mean, it starts off with, am I dreaming or is this real life? And he tells about his earliest hockey memories or watching the Jets, and then, of course, being a kid that was at Moose games and falling in love with it. I mean, this picture of he and his brother and his dad with the Teemu Selanne shirts is just awesome. But there's a few more pictures in this that if people haven't seen it, they will want to. Jets jersey and the Jets painter hat probably looks about 5-6 years old there. You You can go to the next one. There he is with a very cool Jets starter a jacket that he was wearing at the outdoor rink. And then, of course, the Junior Jets hat from probably some spring team he was on as a little kid. Is he wearing number 68 there?
Yeah,
his number?
Yeah, it looks like that's correct.
68. But that's certainly Jonathan Toews. And then I think that there's one more wearing his Winnipeg Junior Jets. So this really is somewhat of a homecoming. And that's the picture. Yeah, that cool Jet starter jacket with some hockey trophy one and a Manitoba Moose hat. So, I can't wait to hear from Jonathan when we actually hear from him at some point once he signs the contract and meets the media. But I think we can take a lot from this, that not only is he very much excited to resume his NHL career, but there is a real element of coming home and trying to contribute to this team and this community after doing such incredible things for the Chicago Blackhawks franchise during the entirety of the rest of his NHL career.
Yeah, I think this is really cool, and I hope that, he's able to come back similar to how Landeskog did and contribute. And it seems like, just based on what the contract could be, Dreger's comments from his agent that will play, that they feel that he can be a major contributor here. And what Elliott said as well is pitching Ehlers that, okay, Jonathan Toews is who you're going to be playing with. So, we don't know what it's going to be. He hasn't played for a couple of years, but I do agree that if you, with the training and the resources these guys have, he can come back after a multi-year layoff and be a contributor. So him putting out this Instagram post, digging up the old pictures, like, they got to put these Solani shirts on sale, right? And remake them like this.
No, they need to remake a Toews shirt.
Like, remake this as like a Toews shirt,
Yeah.
or they got to come back, remake this.
Some of this gear is incredible. Like, that is an unbelievable Winnipeg family pick with the dad and the boys all rocking the Solani shirts, and it certainly does take you back to that point where Teemu was the talk of the town and the most popular player we had in Winnipeg for a very long time. Let's hear quickly from Pat Brisson, because Josh is going to join us in a minute. Here's Pat Brisson, Toews' agent, on the contract they've agreed to and his return to the NHL.
Well, what a journey. I mean, the past few years, he's gone through so much. And I would say the past 6 to 8 months, he started to show some great, positive sign, first of all, about his health and feeling way better. Obviously hockey is secondary at that point. You want to have a healthy life and be happy and all that. And less than a year ago, he felt way better and better. And we start planting seeds into each other's heads, so to speak. Hey, you're probably going to get back at one point. And I would say about 6 months ago, he says, I'm working towards that. And I do believe that I'll be able to achieve that goal. And a few months ago, I would say less than 2 now. And he's been working out for quite a while now, but working out and being in game shape is two different things. And we had the call a couple of months ago that he felt great and ready to go. So no, it's an amazing story. It was had goosebumps when we agreed to the deal, actually, even late last night.
All right, so there's Pat Brisson speaking about that from 590 The Fan. Here's just one more clip from Brisson with a little bit more on the return to the NHL with Jonathan Toews.
He's coming back to be Jonathan Toews and to make a difference and to hopefully win another championship, another Stanley Cup. He's got high expectations on himself, and so we don't doubt that. Now, as far as his skating, yes, he's been skating. He hasn't been skating in front of teams, perhaps, but he's been skating with, Adam Oates, and he's been also, with different good skates, and to a point where he feels, ready, feels like he's going in the right direction. So it became more like when we made it public a few weeks ago that he's coming back. I mean, we had a high level of interest. I mean, it's Jonathan Toews, and everyone respects the fact that if he's making that decision, it's just not to be on a roster and just to collect a paycheck. It's to make a difference and to be the player, the person that he is. So we had a really, really high level of interest. And obviously with him being a 35 and over and the fact that he's also missed some time, but 35 and over, you can do that one year deal with a lower base and use a cushion. So he worked out very well.
All right, we'll hit more of the Toews story and the Jets coming up with Mike McIntyre in a bit, but Josh Frey-Sam is ready to roll and talk some Bombers as they go to 2-0, heading back to host the Elks on Thursday at Princess Auto Stadium. Just before we bring in Josh, huge thanks to Rolly's Transfer for their support of WST, the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba, now into their 7th decade. And keep your eyes out on the road, people, for a beautiful new Rolly's Transfer truck featuring Winnipeg Sports Talk on it. I'm going to work on a little contest for you for if you see that truck on the road. So if you do see the WST truck out there, make sure to snap a pic, send it in to us. We'll give you more details on that as we get into the summer. But for all your moving needs, make it Rolly's. You can find out more. You can request an estimate today on the move after giving them the information, and use that promo code WST over at Rollies.com. St. Vital Dental Center is ready to take care of you and your family, as they've been doing for generations of Winnipeggers and Manitobans. Now they have a beautiful new facility at 167 St. Anne's with convenient free parking in the background and a full array of dental services, from checkups and cleanings all the way to things like dental implants, and an incredible team of staff along with our pal Dr. Terry waiting to take care of you and your family. If you're looking for a dentist, or maybe it's been a minute since you've been there, head on down to St. Vital Dental Center, stvitaldental.ca for all the information on their services, as well as to make an appointment to come in and see them. Another great weekend. Well, yesterday wasn't too great with all that rain, but of course, summer is officially here, and the new drinks of summer are available at your local Manitoba liquor marts. Of course, Canadian Club, the official spirit of the Bombers. See it enjoyed consistently at Princess Auto Stadium. Right now, you can also get the great taste of Canadian Club and ginger ale, the new CC Citrus Smash, and the Canadian Club half and half lemonade iced tea in the Canadian Club Club Pack, ready for summer at your local Manitoba liquor marts today. And hey, gotta shout out my pal Donnie over at the Manitoba Battery right now. He has told me that I need to remind all of you to wake up, Winnipeg, and realize that for all of your battery needs, especially as we get into summer for things like boats and campers and ATVs, you can save up to $60 a battery by shopping local at Manitoba Battery compared to all of the big box stores. Not only do they have the best prices in town by a lot, they've got the best customer service. 2 locations to serve you: Logan Avenue, Dover Court Drive. And of course, they'll also deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere inside the city of Winnipeg perimeter. So whether you're popping down and seeing them in store, give them a phone call, or ordering online at manitobabattery.com, don't waste time and don't waste money. Shop local and get the best deals around with manitobabattery.com. All right, we're going to bring in Josh Frey-Sam and get the latest on the Bombers. This segment is brought to you by Ben Moss. Ben Moss, proudly Canadian owned and operated with history dating back more than 100 years. 3 locations in Winnipeg: Polo Park Shopping Center, St. Vital Center, and Kildonan Place. Committed to customer satisfaction. You can check out a large selection of Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, and mined diamonds available with payment plans to suit your need. For more information, check them out online at benmoss.com. Ben Moss, for the love of jewelry. Let's bring in Josh Frey-Sam back from the road. Josh, what's up, buddy? How's the weekend?
Weekend was great, Huss. Appreciate you having me on, man. That was my first road trip as a member of the Free Press. So that was a big weekend for me. I'm not gonna lie, busy one, but I couldn't have selected I've had a better city to go to. Vancouver, I think I've been there maybe like a half a dozen times in my life now, and it's every time I go, I never want to leave. And it's I had a lot of fun, kind of a little bit of fun time to myself to walk around downtown, check out the seawall on Saturday, walked around the seawall and all that stuff. So kept busy, but it was a busy weekend.
Well, I mean, listen, it was great to, you've been killing it on the Bomber beat, and it was great to see you on the road for that first game out there. And I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, great stadium, great city, and great matchup. Although, sort of a weird matchup when you're talking about a back-to-back between these two teams at the start of the season that featured two different starting quarterbacks that were in the lineup behind center just a week earlier. But different personnel, same result. Very nice team win by the Bombers in the return of Zach Collaros. What'd you think?
Yeah, that's kind of been the theme through 2 weeks. Feels like it's been a balanced team effort. I mean, yeah, sure, the defense has been and has been for quite some time and probably will continue to be the backbone of this team. But at the same time, you got the special teams that is now 2 straight weeks. You had, Trey Vaval make the splash debut in week 2. But then also they had Michael Chris Ike force a fumble in week 2 as well. And now back-to-back weeks, you had also a muffed punt recovered by now Jalen Smith, rookie linebacker. So special teams is making a splash. Defense is holding their own. Offense has had moments that they've looked really, really good, particularly on the opening drive of both games. And yeah, it was kind of a weird one though for the most part. Like I think it was 2 drives. We saw 1 drive from each team in the first quarter.
Bizarre.
Right? But super bizarre. And then BC, that first drive carries over into the second quarter when they kick their field goal. So it was kind of weird. Zach Collaros gets a really long, nice, healthy drive, 12 plays. And then you're sitting on the bench for about whatever it is, ends up being in real time, 10, 15 minutes or whatever, maybe more. And so, yeah, it was a really weird one. Defensive battle throughout the entire game. I know both offenses probably wish they would have been able to been a little bit more high powered, but it was a defensive battle here. And credit I think needs to go to both sides, but specifically BC after they Winnipeg, they looked pretty efficient in that first meeting. And now you got Zach coming back. I thought BC's defense actually did a pretty darn good job against Winnipeg's offense. But overall, Winnipeg just made way more splash plays. And at the end of the day, the turnovers are what wins football games, and you win the ball, you win football games. Winnipeg did that with 5 turnovers on this night. They've been just ball merchants over there.
Yeah, we heard a couple clips from Mike O'Shea after the game when you and the assembled media there were kind of asking for his reaction to the game. And, while I think he was frustrated in some ways that they definitely left some points on the board, made a couple mistakes themselves, high praise for the defense, especially in the scoring zone where, some turnovers took sure points off the board for the BC Lions.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? There were the turnovers were big as far as that. Those were the splash plays of the game. You talk about Jamal Parker Jr. returning the ball, obviously fumble recovery, headsy play from him. And then he goes back and a couple drives later, he picks off Jeremiah Mazzoli. But yeah, that's the one thing, Huss, I think if this team, you walked around, I wrote about it, you walked around the locker room and yeah, nobody's going to complain about a win. Nobody's going to ever apologize for winning, right? But, you talk to guys and it's the kind of an incomplete effort for the second week in a row. You know what I mean? Yeah, you're happy to win. We're 2-0. Everything's great. We're going home. But there's a lot to clean up. And it wasn't even the regular coach speak, right? Oh, yeah, there's lots to clean up. But it was more so, yeah, no, really, Willie Jefferson got disqualified at the end of that game. You had the touchdown. Zach Collaros at the end of the first half, right, which O'Shea shouldered the blame for the second straight week, by the way. He shouldered the blame for the way the team handled going into the half, right? We saw it was last week. It was Nathan Rourke connecting with Aiden Eberhardt on a deep shot right after being stymied the entire first half. They go connect on a 50-yard ball, which leads to a touchdown rush for Rourke to go into halftime. Keeps the door a little bit open for the Lions there. And now this time around, it was Zach. There was a moment in which, with 2 minutes left, you probably would have liked to see Winnipeg's offense kind of take their time a little bit, matriculate the ball down the field, suck up some clock, and then get themselves into scoring range. Well, and I'm not going to necessarily, hate on Zach he saw an opportunity, right? I'm not going to hate on him for taking a deep shot to Nick Dembski there. But the reality is that he takes the shot and it kind of backfires. Nick Dembski, and I don't even think that pick was necessarily the decision I didn't mind. I didn't necessarily agree with from Zach, but the throw itself wasn't that bad. Nick Dembski actually just, if you watch on the replay, he just kind of outran the ball. It was it was kind of funny because he saw Nick, he located the ball, and then he like saw it, and then he turned around, and then he ran head down sprinting to try and like meet the ball at where he thought it was going to be. And then when he looked up, it was just like, oh, he outran the ball by like 5 yards. And so it's kind of like, yeah, I don't even think that one was necessarily on Zach, the actual end result of that play. But then again, at the end of the game, from inside his own 5-yard line, he goes and heaves up another one to Dalton Schoen, and that one gets picked off, which then leads to the last touchdown of the game for BC. So again, just kind of head-scratching decisions, head-scratching moments in the game that kind of leaves the team with a little bit of a sour taste in their mouth at the end of the game. I mean, I guess it's good that you have something to work on, right? And nothing's perfect, and that's good, something to chase. But yeah, for as much good as there is in Bomberland right now with this team, definitely some things that they want to work on.
You know, just from an offensive perspective, I agree with you. I mean, I think that, you know, the way they finished wasn't maybe up to their standard or the standard that Mike O'Shea would like. Mm. But it certainly did feel like the game was over well beforehand. And listen, when you drop a thick 6, the big man touchdown on your opponent, I got thinking about that. Like, Hogan's had 2 games as an offensive coordinator. He's going up against the guy that he worked with all last year. Like, I didn't know whether there was an element of sort of sticking it to their pal Buck with that particular play call and execution of it, or whether it was just a spot that they thought they'd try it and it worked. But it was a bit of an exclamation mark on just how much fun the Bombers were having up until that point, when a big offensive lineman wearing number 65 is hauling down a touchdown for 6.
Yeah, man, that was special. Anytime you see the big man TD, doesn't matter what team, whatever, man. Are you kidding me? And honestly, it wasn't even usually like you'll see the big man TDs as maybe he gets forgotten about, and he's just like, he's got an hour to catch the ball, and he just kind of he just cradles it in, right? And he falls down to the ground. This was Tui kind of showing soft hands, little toe tap.
Hands team.
You kidding me? I was just like, Tui, come on now. So he was, I talked to him after the game, man. He's like, yeah, I've scored lots of tries in rugby, but never have gotten into the end zone for a touchdown. So he was fired up about that one. But,
it certainly was probably the most memorable play from a Bomber standpoint, and we'll be right up there with the season highlights.
No doubt.
I really love what the defense did though for most of the game though, and you mentioned Jamal Parker. I think he continues to sort of break out as a real difference maker on this club. But I'll tell you what, man, Terrell Bonds on the corner. Like, you know, what was our big question this year? Okay, Ford is gone. He was such an impact player. I mean, do they have a guy that can pop in and play in that spot? Now, listen, doesn't have the Canadian passport, which changes things a little bit. But I don't think they've missed a beat right now with those corners. And what was so impressive, Josh, was his positioning, and he was going up against Justin McInnes. There was absolutely no separation. And as the game went on, you saw more and more instances where, like a 10-year veteran, his positioning was so good that he was essentially running guys out of bounds. So even if they were able to catch the ball,
right,
they were 2 yards out of bounds. And I mean, we came in with some big questions as to how this defense was going to look with some key departures in the offseason. To me, Bonds has had just an amazing start to the season. I thought was a very, very big part of that win on Saturday.
No question. And like he plays with, actually, I've kind of noticed even just this last game, he plays with kind of like this attitude as well. He's a willing tackler, willing to stick his face in the fire. Like Terrell, he's really shown some great stuff early on in the season here. And Marquise Bridges, both outside on the corner. I thought, now if there's one thing that you're going to kind of poke at for the Bombers, it's going to be the big plays, right? It's been back-to-back weeks that if there's a sore spot, you know, they've been prone to giving up the deep ball. But overall, big picture looking at it, I mean, I don't know really what more you could ask out of the secondary here. Marquise Bridges goes out and gets 2 picks in week 2. Jamal Parker goes out and makes 2 big plays now in this next game. Terrell Bonds is holding things down, and like you mentioned, running. I think it was Keon Hatcher on one of those, running him out of bounds. He was blanketing Justin McInnes the entire game, and so there was a lot of big time plays that aren't even necessarily going to show up on the stat sheet, Huss, but just these plays that they're kind of like these hidden plays where you go back and look at the film and you're like, wow, like Terrell Bonds, okay, this guy's kind of showing up here. And like you said, haven't missed a beat. And like that was kind of the big thing, right? You lose Terrell Ford, and you're not sure. You have James Vaughters coming opposite Willie Jefferson, and Brandon Alexander leaves, and so Jamal Parker's coming in. So you're losing these vets though in the secondary, and so there was really definitely who's going to step up. Can they hold their own? Is Jordan Younger going to have to figure something out from a scheme perspective to kind of help mask these guys? No, none whatsoever. These guys are playing aggressive. These guys are playing fast. They're playing physical. They're attacking the ball, which has been great to see. And yeah, they're making life really difficult on these BC Lions quarterbacks. And so now you got Trey Ford coming in, and we'll see how he handles this secondary.
Hey, Josh, back to the offense. It's great to see that Dalton Schoen is back to being Dalton Schoen. Obviously, it was Zach's first game back. But do we have an emerging star in front of our eyes with Keurig Wheatfall? He seems to be more and more a part of the offense game after game. And, he's a guy that is obviously during the offseason familiarity with the Canadian game and all that has taken a big, big jump this year. And for all the wonders, okay, where are all the targets for Kenny Lawler going to go? It seems like 88 has his hand up and is getting a lot of that attention.
Yeah, man, if you're a fantasy, Huss, you and I like our fantasy football, man. If you're a fantasy football player, like, shoot, the Keurig Wheatfall's the guy to have right now. You know what I mean? He is the guy leading the team in targets, catches, yards. And this is a guy I talked to after the game, and he said, listen, he was not happy with the way, obviously, the Grey Cup and how things ended last year, but just specifically his own performance in that Grey Cup. He just wasn't happy about it. And so he said he kind of was coming back into this game. It meant maybe a little bit more to him. It was kind of, he's taking it personal, probably like a lot of these guys did in going into this matchup. So Carrick, though, is a guy that I've talked about before as far as you just want to get the ball in this guy's hands. I mean, and one thing that I'm kind of loving, Huss, is that you've got Jason Hogan, who's not afraid to use Carrick in different ways. Like, he's not just necessarily staying out there on the weak side, outside of the formation there. We saw it on the very first drive of the game. Big gain, ran a deep over route, got in behind the BC Lions into the second level there, into the last level. And actually, I'm not even sure if I think Zach purposely threw it low to him so that he could just kind of protect his wide receiver there. But at the same time, I think he probably could have laid it out there a little bit for him, and Carrick probably could have ran and picked up an even bigger game. But the point is that Carrick got lost in behind, and so Jason Hogan is obviously noticing this guy's got speed, man. And like I can't help but think the classic play that I always think about is just sending him on like a quick slant, him catching the ball, shedding the tackle from a cornerback, and then off to the races, and he just outruns the rest of the defense. And I still feel like we're going to see a play like that this season at some point. We haven't yet, but this is a guy who you just want to get the ball in his hands, explosiveness, has open field quickness, and obviously has shown that his ability to make the play at every level as well. He's not only been used on the quick slants, he's not only been thrown the smoke screens, he's not only been used on the deep over routes, but now he's also been in back-to-back weeks, been used on kind of the deep outside go ball, let him go outrun someone or on a post route and go haul in a catch, right? He caught the 35-yard touchdown pass from Chris Strevler last week, and now he goes in and records the biggest play of the game in this game in the fourth quarter, catching a 48-yarder from Zach Claro. So there's a lot to be excited about Dalton, and honestly, we still have my training camp darling Jarrett Stearns, who he's, again, I said he's not making a ton of noise on the stat sheet, but has obviously made a couple of nice little plays. And this is a receiving core that is really, really well balanced. And Carrick Wheatfall emerging as kind of that solid number 2 option, kind of opens up everything else for the Nick Dembskys of the world, Dalton Schoen and Jarrett Stearns.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what Dylan Mitchell has to do to find his way back into the lineup. But right now, I mean, when you're winning and everyone's doing their job, it makes it a lot tougher.
You almost forget about him a little bit, Dylan Mitchell, after
big time. Well, I mean, listen, he's never really been there yet. I mean, we've only talked to him because of the fact that there was some pomp and circumstance to the signing of him and some money that went there.
Right.
And as we've talked about last week, I'm not sure that he'd be here right now if that wasn't the case. But hey, good to have depth because you know it's going to be next man up at some point, and
That's right.
he'll have to wait his turn. Speaking of next man up, Brady Oliveira, as we talked about last week, knocked out in the first game early. It was the Matthew Paterson show. They went in with Matthew Paterson and Quentin Cooley. Paterson started off strong, I think cooled off a little bit. We got to see Cooley. Just thoughts on the Bomber running game and the two young men that had a chance to get their hands on the football with Brady on the sidelines.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is that I think that this is why I said credit to the Lions defense, because I mean they were they did a much better job, obviously, of I think they got a little bit of a check after going, okay, well, Brady's out, okay, let's just we got this rookie, and then it's okay, well, he shredded us for $130, so maybe we should pay attention to this guy as well. But yeah, they did a much better job on Pearson, but overall, I mean, you still saw the power that Matthew has. He kind of carried a couple of piles with him in this game. Quentin Cooley, you saw the power, carried a couple of piles with him. One thing, Huss, I'll touch on that I kind of track. One thing that I always track with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers is, well, every team really. We know how important the running game is, but specifically the Bombers, because we know how important the running game and Brady Oliveira is to them, is their first down carry percentage and how much they do run the ball on first down, because we know that this team needs to get into these more favorable downs and distances and to pick up second downs, right? Well, in that first drive, you saw Winnipeg the Winnipeg offense convert 4 out of their 5 second down opportunities. Going forward after that, they only completed 4 the rest of the game. 4 out of 13, I think they went the rest of the game. So you're talking about a team, then that kind of leads me to go, okay, well, are they getting into favorable situations on second down? Well, this team had 26 opportunities on first down. Not 26 first downs that they completed, but 26 first and 10s. That's what they ended up with in this game. 14 of those first down opportunities were carries, which is good. Great balance from Jason Hogan. And in the first half, they had 6 carries for 36 yards. So on first down, which is 6 yards per rush. They're getting in favorable distances. The second half cooled off a little bit. 8 carries for 36 yards on first down. 4.5 yards per rush, but they're still getting in favorable distances. So that kind of leads me to say that, okay, well, maybe they're just not dialing up something properly on second down to stay on the field. And Zach noted that after the game. And so second down, though, you look at, they only had 4 carries on second down the entire game, which tells me even though they were having the success on first down, maybe that's something Jason Hogan looks at doing, even if it is Matthew Pearson and Quentin Cooley, continue to run the ball, because you're getting into these 2nd and 5 situations or 2nd and 4 situations, but then you're dropping back and passing and it's an incomplete pass. Well, now they got no chance for Chris Streveler to come into the game and on 3rd and 1 and try and punch this thing forward and get a first down. Now instead you're forced to punt, and that is what we saw over and over again. So I think if there's one thing, the running game for me. Yeah, could you say the end result, they cooled off a little bit? Yeah, they could have, but at the same time, I don't think there was that much of a drop off from in production. Like they're picking up 6 yards of carry on first down in the first half. That can't really ask for much better than that. And so that's my opinion anyway. So I think maybe Jason Hogan, maybe he'll look at potentially in these second and mediums. Maybe he runs the ball again with Matthew Peterson, because I think he's shown that he's earned it. He deserves it. And Quentin Cooley as well. He has the speed, but he certainly has the power.
Yeah, he's quite the frame. I mean, essentially, I described him earlier as like a hot water tank with legs. Yeah. And he is a load. I mean, you want to talk about short yardage. I mean, I don't think there was a case where he got hit and didn't get at least another 1 or 2 yards at any point after contact.
Those are those hidden yards, man. They talk about it, right? Those are the hidden yards where you fall forward, and then it's an extra 1 or 2 yards. And those aren't, they still up on the stat sheet, but you kind of almost wish there was a hidden yards column, because it's like, Quentin Cooley fell forward that added another 5, 6, 7 yards to the game or something like that. Those add up.
They do. Quickly, special teams. Sergio, I mean, what can you say about him? 55-yarder, 2 for 2, 3 for 3 on PATs. Yeah. But our biggest question, Josh, was the return game. Peyton Logan was coming in. Well, he hasn't seen the field yet. Do the Bombers onto something with Trey Val? He seems to be getting more comfortable in that position. And listen, I granted that the bar was somewhat low, but it does seem like this return game has a little bit of life to it with him in the lineup.
Oh, no doubt, man. Yeah, it's now you are absolutely on the edge of your seat. I think there needs to be. Well, he hasn't sprung necessarily a touchdown one yet, right? He hasn't sprung one for a touchdown, but again, even in BC, even though it wasn't necessarily a highlight reel play, there were still a couple of those moments where it was a catch and make a guy miss. And yeah, he probably should have been tackled for a 8-9 yard gain. And he picked up 15 instead. Right. And that's just, again, you look at that goes back to, I think, his mentality. You saw Janarian Grant, I think, and listen, here's one thing I like to share. Last year I talked to, and I'm not trying to throw Lucky Whitehead under the bus here or anything like that, but I talked to Lucky Whitehead last year, and I asked him, like, what's kind of your mentality when you're catching the football, right? Like catching punts. Like what's kind of going through your mind, and how do you approach that? He said, honestly, man, I'm 31 years old. Like, I'm just trying not to make a mistake. I'm trying not to fumble, and I'm trying not to take a big hit, right? At the end of the day, I'm 31. I recover a little slower now. I kind of laughed at it. It was funny. But at the end of the day, his mentality was, I just don't want to make a mistake. And I kind of thought about that, and I was like, you think Janarian Grant, that's what he's thinking when he catches the football, is I just don't want to make a mistake? No. He's thinking, I want to score 6 points. That's what he's thinking. And I'll tell you what, that carries over. That is absolutely with Trey Vaval as well. He's catching the ball. He wants to score, and he said on multiple occasions now, I will throw my body on the line. I will take a big hit if it means in the name of a couple of extra yards, and while, of course, playing smart and holding on to the football. So yes, do I think that the Bombers have something here in Trey Vaval? Absolutely. I think that he's shown on several occasions already that he is a big play waiting to happen. He has shown that he is not afraid to go pick up a couple of extra hard-earned yards. And so I think that's valid. There's value there. Now, Peyton Logan, obviously we know what he brings to the table. He's already proven in that category. But, and then, yeah, I know he makes his big plays as well. He's made big plays on special teams as well. But, I mean, at this point in time, why wouldn't you just kind of ride with the hot hand? I know ratio comes into conversation and stuff like that. Trey Vaval's American, whatever. I know that's all part of the conversation. But at the end of the day, man, I think that Trey Vaval needs to be, I think he's earned the right to kind of run with this thing as long as he possibly can.
Well, you can't help the club from the tub, so we'll wait to see. We'll wait to see when Peyton Logan's back, and then what happens after that. Hey, just quickly on the way out, a bit of CFL news of a former Bomber. How about Adam Bighill signing in Calgary?
Yeah, that's huge, man. No, good for him. Honestly, like back-to-back years where he has suffered a significant injury, and we just finished watching Jeremiah Masoli, who's gone through just wow over the last 5 years or so. Adam Bighill, for another guy, an older guy, to come back and kind of be able to be playing still, and obviously you suspect he's going to find his way onto the field sooner rather than later. You just can't discredit the guy's love for the game, man. So anytime you got a guy who loves the game like that, you just you can't help but feel good for him. So we'll see. Calgary and Winnipeg will be playing sooner rather than later. So we'll see if he's on the field for that, and see if he can't make the Bombers eat their decision a little bit.
Yeah, I know he's starting on the practice roster. I'd be surprised if he wasn't in that Stampede Bowl game for that new trophy on the 3rd of July. Josh, great stuff. Keep it up over at the Free Press. Love the coverage of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and looking forward to Thursday night with the Elks coming to town to kick off the week in the Canadian Football League. Thanks for doing this, dude.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
At Frey-Sam on X, and make sure you can check out, because some great NFL content there as well from our pal Josh. All right. Well, speaking of that Bomber game, you know where it is. Princess Auto Stadium. 30,000 plus already booked for Thursday night. Still some tickets available, but not very many. Of course, Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Bombers and their home, Princess Auto Stadium, and Winnipeg Sports Talk. 3 Manitoba locations where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Of course, if you can't make it down in person, you can shop online 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. I am less than 2 weeks away from getting out to Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, which I cannot wait. The countdown is on. Looking forward to welcoming our auction winner, Mark, and his guest out for a few great days of fishing. If you're thinking about a fishing trip where, fly in, where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg with world-class fishing and even more world-class hospitality from our great friends at Aikens Lake. Get on over to aikenslake.com for more information on options and availability for the 2025 fishing season. And make sure to check them out on their socials as well, at Aikens Lake, for more of what the Aikens experience is all about. And hey, wedding season is here, gang. Lots of them planned for the summer. Guys, if you're looking into your closet and realize you got to step your menswear game up, head on down to F Apparel at 190 Smith Street for the best in custom suits, chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, all sorts of menswear accessories. And of course, if you're having a wedding or are in a wedding party, make sure to talk to the fellas about getting that great discount that they do for wedding parties. And of course, they've got a great sale going on right now, June 28th and June 29th, the Everything Under the Sun sale, 15% off everything. Find out more, make an appointment online at that's EPHapparel.com. All right, we're going to get back to the Jets. Big week, NHL draft coming up on Friday. Scott Wheeler's going to join us in a few minutes. But let's bring in Mike McIntyre. And this segment's brought to you by your Prairie Toyota dealers, who want to remind you to get in and go with the Toyota Tundra. Quality that means it has the strength to take on any challenge, off-road or hauling a heavy load, and it's backed by the peace of mind knowing it's a Toyota. So take the road less traveled in comfort, room for teammates, friends, and gear. And can we talk about how good this truck looks? Everywhere the Toyota Tundra goes, it is turning heads. Available now from $154 weekly for 60 months at 5.39% APR with $71.99 down. Hybrid options available. Visit shoptoyota.ca. Let's welcome Mike McIntyre in. Mike, how was the weekend? Welcome back to the show.
It was a good weekend. Yeah, end of my holidays. Normally, I would be bemoaning the return to work, but Huss, it's always a pleasure to be on the job here, especially when there's so much going on with the Winnipeg Jets, whether it's Toews, you got the draft coming up this week, kind of knee deep in some draft prep today for a piece I'm writing tomorrow. We got development camp, and that starts next Monday. We're going to be watching guys that haven't even been drafted by the Jets yet on the ice a week from today, which is everything's moving pretty quick here. And of course, some prospects from previous drafts. We got some on ice action coming up. We got free agency. NHL schedule will be out soon. There's a lot going on here to kind of keep the head spinning. So yeah, life is good. Things are great.
Let's start off before we get to this week with talking about last Friday and the long rumored return of Jonathan Toews comes to fruition, and it is announced that it is happening here with the Winnipeg Jets. Listen, we talked about it pretty much all Friday, pretty much most of my conversations on the weekend. If it wasn't about the Bombers during the game or about Jonathan Toews, and you can tell this is a huge signing for the Winnipeg Jets. Now, I think the verdict is still out as to exactly how Jonathan Toews is going to look on the ice, but when you look at the way the contract is structured, and the fact that he is so committed to coming back, hard for most Jet fans not to feel pretty good about this one. And obviously, from your perspective, the storylines, plenty of those as well, Mike.
Yeah, there really are. It's a win in that sense for sure. It's a win from kind of the media perspective in terms of what we'll be able to kind of dig into, and I would suggest, Huss, it's already a win from a PR and an off-ice perspective. The Jets had a lot of goodwill, of course, coming out of this past season and all that they accomplished and the playoff run. And I would suggest, signing the hometown boy, a surefire Hall of Famer, probably the greatest player this province has produced, to have him, pick his hometown for his comeback. That's going to bring a lot of eyeballs on the product for sure, but it also brings, I think, some real goodwill. I'm sure the Toews jerseys will be flying off the shelves. And, whether he scores 1 goal or 100 goals over his Jets career, whatever, or no goals, I think, they've they knocked it out of the park with bringing him in. As you say, the hockey part of it, that's obviously going to have to wait till the fall to see how that looks and exactly how that all plays out. But this made so much sense. As soon as we heard Jonathan Toews was planning a comeback, it always made sense. It's just a question of whether he saw it the same way, and clearly he did. I know there were some other teams in the mix. It certainly sounds, though, that Jonathan Toews kind of always had his eyes set on Winnipeg. And the Jets certainly, they were in on Toews from the get-go as soon as they heard that he might return to the ice. So it's a win-win, I think, on many levels, and certainly an exciting time for the organization. And my understanding, Huss, is, of course, they can't officially make the signing till next Tuesday, when essentially the new season begins and the old season turns over. But there will be some kind of news conference next week where Jonathan Toews will be speaking, and I don't know if that's going to happen down at the rink. Hey, they're opening up Portage and Main later this week, Huss. Maybe they'll have it. That'd be a good way to show off the new pedestrian-friendly, famous intersection, wouldn't it? It almost would seem fitting in a way, shades of Bobby Hull, if you will. So I don't know what they have planned, but we will be hearing kind of in some detail from Jonathan Toews next week.
Mike, through all of this, listen, I was keen to see what happened, and I hope that it would come to fruition. Considering the difficulties the Jets have on the free agent market with other players and knowing what their needs are and what the potential for a Toews return could do in a number of different ways for the club. I was unsure of whether the hometown thing would sort of resonate with Toews, whether this was just a matter of going to a place where he feels that he could win a Stanley Cup or be a part of a really good team. I think it's credit to Winnipeg that they put themselves in the position that they are, that he would consider coming back here. But we showed that Instagram post that he put out later on of all those pictures of him as a 5 and 6 and 7-year-old wearing his Jet stuff. And I mean, it really does seem like, as much as people like you and the media will try and spin it, it's this great story, a homecoming, it's certainly, from his words himself that he put out there, feels like that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, I mean, like you wonder, and this is one of the questions I'm sure we'll ask him next week when he speaks, but like, he obviously got drafted by the Blackhawks, and that's where he spent his whole career. And I would imagine us, like, he probably envisioned, in a way, finishing his career, with Chicago. But I wonder deep down, like, had it always been in the back of his head that there was a scenario that could see him come to Winnipeg? And clearly the way this played out with a 2-year absence from the league and, the long COVID and his recovery from that was definitely not in the script. But I do wonder if he always envisioned, like, well, I'd like to finish my career where I started with Chicago, but if that were to somehow go south and there was a parting of the ways, like, would Winnipeg have always been his plan B, if you will? Now, to your point, I agree that the on-ice product had to be what it is this year for him to consider the Jets. Like, if the Jets were coming off, if the Jets were a lottery team, they had missed the playoffs, if things didn't exactly look all that rosy around here, I don't think he's joining the Jets for, a goodwill final tour that wouldn't involve competing for a Stanley Cup. Like, I think that was very important to him. And, you look at the few teams that it was released that were out there, that were also in the mix. They were all, perennial contenders. Vegas, Colorado, I think I saw Tampa listed in there. So, this is one of those rare times, Huss, where the Jets can say they were in the mix with those teams and they actually won the player lottery. They don't get a lot of those wins, especially if they're competing with those teams. But this is a unique situation. It's a heck of a story. And, I was interested to see what this contract was going to look like. And I know there's some I don't know if angst is the right word, but I suspect there's some people that feel the bonuses here are maybe a little too generous. Would have liked to see more performance bonus as opposed to just like playing time bonus or how many games he dresses for. But I do think that this is designed in a way that if Toews can play well and help the cause and stay healthy, and the Jets are doing well, that again, that sort of win-win continues when it comes to the contract. And, the bonus here is that the commitment is only to $2 million this year. Like, for people thinking that this is somehow prohibitive for this season, it really is not. It's the Jets will gladly kind of kick this down the road and pay. They'd love to pay all of those bonuses, especially the final one, because it would mean they've won the Stanley Cup, and they'd gladly deal with that next year on the cap. Then, and if that's what it comes to. But for now, I mean, this isn't prohibitive where now the Jets are suddenly handcuffed and they're not going to be able to potentially go out and do other things. And especially if Nikolai Ehlers is with a new team in a week from now, I mean, and they're not committing that money to him. So, yeah, I think the contract surprised me a little bit. There's a lot of bonuses in there. I think the base is around where we all kind of thought it would be. And, if Jonathan Toews can hit all those bonuses, I think that probably bodes well for the Jets team as a whole.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, if they're at the cap otherwise and these bonuses all kick in, great. It moves to next year, and then there's another big increase in the cap, and it's sort of taken care of. So, and here's why I kind of get the way the bonuses are structured, because I think Jonathan Toews is going to help this hockey club in many more ways than simply goals and assists.
Yeah.
We know what sort of a defensive player he is. We know how they lean on him, or have always leaned on him to be one of the best face-off guys in the league. And then, the intangibles of what he can do, never mind just with young players, but also with Mark Scheifele, Josh Morrissey. I mean, with the leaders on this team, considering the experiences and what he's done in the National Hockey League, at the Olympics, I mean, all of those things. So,
well, just to carry off that, Huss, I mean, you don't think when the Jets were playing in St. Louis in that first round and in Dallas, where they went 0 for the road, these playoffs, that they wouldn't have liked to have the calming, experienced voice of reason, that presence of a Jonathan Toews in the room, maybe just to calm everybody down, like, because clearly there was some, like, the Jets conquered some demons in these past playoffs, but there's still some ghosts that remain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I got to think a guy like Jonathan Toews is the perfect, like, they obviously brought in the Luke Schenn with the idea of helping. And I think they're, forget about anything on ice. I think Luke Schenn certainly helped off ice, and he'll be around next year barring something. But now they've added another experienced voice, one who they hope still has a lot of game as well and isn't just a fringe depth player like a Schenn. And I just think that's like you say, that's a value that maybe that speaks kind of to the way the bonuses are structured.
Well, let's pull it into the story that has not gone away, Nikolai Ehlers' future. And I mean, we were sort of asking just out loud, like with the timing of the announcement last week, knowing that they can't sign, was this just to get it done with and move on to the next thing? Or might they be hoping, and I'm sure they were, that this could be maybe a bit of a carrot to Nikolai Ehlers, that this team is very committed to being better next year, adding a guy like that. Not sure if that actually resonates with Ehlers considering his situation right now, but just thoughts on the timing of it, the way that was announced, and can that have any effect on Ehlers' decision coming up in the next week or two?
The difficulty in answering, and this has been the case from day one about Ehlers, we do not know what he is thinking. We do not, like, I saw a report the other day, Haas, I forget which insider it was, saying that they believe Nikolai Ehlers is looking to go to a market where it's a little quieter. And they were talking about Carolina, which I've always thought Carolina makes sense.
And they were talking not Montreal and Toronto. That was Darren Dreger.
But the idea, like, I've never heard Nikolai Ehlers I thought he kind of likes the spotlight but I guess if he's looking for somewhere quieter, then yeah, it's done. Like, it's not going to be quieter around the Jets this year, Huss. They're coming off winning the President's Trophy, and they just signed Jonathan Toews.
Well, just to be clear, I'm pretty sure that conversation, and I know in like this world where everything gets aggregated and people take that clip and they play it, like it was part of it that he has been very happy in Winnipeg, and it is kind of a quieter market. Like, obviously the Jet players are big deals here, but the conversation there was, of course, being an Eastern base, they were talking about, is there Mitch Marner leaves? Is there a fit in Toronto?
Yeah.
What about Montreal? Is pal Patrick Laine there? And I think the point that Drager was saying is that it is believed that he is sort of looking for a quieter situation, maybe not being like right there in the powder keg that is a couple of those really insane Canadian markets. So like, I didn't take it much more than that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point by you. And I do think, I saw Elliot Friedman tweet the other day, and my understanding last week, as soon as they announced Toews' signing, is that the Jets would absolutely go to Nikolai. It's not like the conversations with Ehlers and his camp have stopped. Like, there's a good dialogue there, and I think that's evident by the fact, Huss, that it's even been reported that Nikolai Ehlers, well, he is unlikely to sign a deal with the Jets prior to July 1. That doesn't completely shut the door that there could be a circling back once he sees what's out there on the market. But yeah, I mean, I've always been convinced that if it got to the point where hit July 1 and he's not signed, that he is gone. But the Toews thing is interesting for sure. Does that change his mindset at all? He played basically all of last year with Vlad Nemestikov as his center. Just going to Nikolai Ehlers and say, well, now you get to play with Jonathan Toews. How does that sound? Does that change your perspective? I don't know. Obviously, Jonathan Toews has the pedigree. There's the marquee name. But again, Nikolai Ehlers might be asking the same questions we're asking us. Well, how much game is there left in John? He's 37 and he hasn't played in 2 years. So if I'm going to put my name down on an 8-year extension, like Jonathan Toews isn't going to be my center for 8 years. What does that look like? And so if it really is about usage and line mates and things like that, I don't know if the Toews signing would necessarily sway Nikolai Ehlers to sign a long-term extension. I have to think he's well aware that this team is serious about winning. He knows ownership. He knows the moves they've made. He knows about moves they've tried to make that maybe didn't pan out. So yeah, it absolutely, it could be a factor. I guess the big question I do come back to, Huss, and when we started talking about Toews months ago, really, when the news first came out, is like, where does he fit in this lineup? And I believe, at least to start, the idea would be, a bottom type 6 role for him. And if the game is there and he can move up, absolutely. Now we know Adam Lowry is going to miss first few weeks, maybe the first month and a bit of the season. So is there a third line role? But certainly the bonus structure and hearing things like the pitch to Ehlers makes you wonder, are they viewing Jonathan Toews right off the hop as their 2C? And does that mean that they're not going to be looking to do anything else next week? And I don't know the answer to that. I would say that I think they should still be looking to do more. I don't know if that's the case, however.
Well, listen, I don't think for a second that they won't be looking to do something more. But, I mean, like, this ain't anything new. I mean, we realize that when the Winnipeg Jets are ponying up on free agent day, it's not an easy sell. And for players that have earned the right to be unrestricted free agents, they often have many options. And listen, look at history. I mean, a lot of the guys that we've got have been that the Jets have, gotten in free agency before have been either at a different stage in their career, right, looking for a spot where they can sort of prove something, coming in because they're offering more money. I mean, who have they really signed? Like Ole Jokinen, Dmitry Kulikov. I mean, those sort of signings, for the most part, were guys that did pretty well for themselves based on the dollar value and where they were. So do I think they'll kick tires on a Granlund and some of those other guys? Yeah. Can they get them? We'll see. I mean, not like there's no guarantee that if the Winnipeg Jets are offering the same or frankly even more money with most NHL free agents that they'll say, okay, I'm in.
Right.
And that's why, I mean, the bottom line is you bring a guy like Toews in, you still want to do the work. But as of right now, if you're looking ahead to next season and knowing that Adam Lowry's going to be out for a month or two, I mean, he's playing somewhere, and it might be higher in the lineup right off the bat, just simply out of necessity if they can't do something. But just quickly on that 2C position, because this is going to be a big topic this week, Mike. I think there's limited options, in free agency period. And we've seen some other guys go off the board already, like Duchesne's gone. Not that I expected him to come here. How aggressive do you think this team might be in adding a player through trade, and might that include the 28th overall pick on Friday night?
Well, I think if they are convinced that Nikolai Ehlers is gone, that's part of why I think the Jets would want clarity, because that leaves a big, big, big hole in your top six. A top six that are not arguably, I think we would all agree, was already a player short. Now you've got Cole Perfetti with Scheifele and Velarde and Connor, but now you've maybe got two pieces you really would like to add to round out that top six. So I think and trade has always been an option that seems to make more sense than free agency for the reasons you just outlined. Winnipeg not being a prime destination, combined with maybe a lack of overall quality in the pool this year. I will say this, Huss, you asked about Ehlers and if Toews' addition could be a selling point to him. If not a selling point directly to Nikolai Ehlers, and as I said, I'm not sure how much that sways it, you have to think that the Jets' sales pitch as a whole, right, like right now, or let's say next Tuesday, July 1, the pitch that they're making to a free agent or even a trade with a guy that might have to waive a no trade, would Winnipeg's pitch not look so much more appealing today or next week than it did a year ago? I mean, look at the things you can pitch to players. You can come play with the Hart Trophy winner and the Vezina Trophy winner, the Jack Adams runner-up. Jonathan Toews, the legend himself, is joining this organization. They've got all these pieces, a top blue liner in Josh Morrissey. They got some young players as well in, Braden Yeager and Brad Lambert. I just think, and they won the President's Trophy, and this is a team that's kind of been sniffing around for a few years now and is looking to take even bigger steps through a very committed ownership group and management group. So, does that ultimately lead to anything? I don't know. I just have to think if you're the Jets and you want to get aggressive this year, as I think they should, I have to think that resonates a little more with some players out there who are looking for good fits. Forget about the cold weather for a minute. Winnipeg would seem to be a very good fit if I'm a player right now looking to do some big things in my career.
Yeah, and listen, I agree with you on that. I mean, they put themselves in a much more attractive position, despite the knocks on Winnipeg because of the personnel they put together and what they've been able to do on the ice. Like I see T. Will and some people saying, hey, you need another, like they need two more top six players. Well, here's the thing. I mean, those players aren't just readily available waiting to come in. I mean, listen, if you could get one of those players in the next week via free agency, great. The other side then is trade. And I mean, the cost of acquiring top six players in the NHL with term on their contract is significant. And then you look at, well, what the Jets have, what they'd be willing to trade, what would actually get it done. And I do think that part of it, and people might not love to hear this, but when we're talking about that middle six of the Winnipeg Jets, although some people who've been wanting more playing time for younger players and whatnot moving on, there may need to be some internal growth from players that maybe had been playing lower in the lineup or hadn't been on this lineup come in and challenge for jobs. And maybe in the first couple months, it's a bit of a work in progress. But by the time you get to March and April, they're ready for prime time and they're ready to perform in that spot. And that's why this next couple weeks in particular is going to be so interesting as to what the Jets are able to do. And then where they go from there with who's left on the roster and the young players that'll be looked to try to compete for spots in the lineup.
Yeah, and I mean, again, the 2C debate, which it feels like we've been having since the beginning of time here, I think in some ways, when we talk 2C, we're really talking 3C because Adam Lowry, when he's healthy, he's not going to be healthy to start the season, of course, but I mean, Adam Lowry is deployed like a 2C. And certainly at times when like Ehlers would move on to his line, then he was really deployed like a 2C. Like that wasn't your third line when it was Lowry with Ehlers. That's your second line. But even in terms of minutes and matchups, like Lowry's kind of been, or call it a 2C A and B kind of thing, like that there's almost a job sharing going on. So, you know, I think when we talk about the NHL these days, like you really need a top 9 and 3 lines. Like look at the Florida Panthers and what they just did. Look at their third line in the playoffs. That third line arguably won them the cup. Like with Brad Marchand on it, that line they were a beast, and you need a third line like that. So whether that's a line with Lowry or with Toews or with someone else, there's a lot of things you can do with the lineup. And I agree with you, Huss. Like this is a huge summer. And it'll be a huge training camp for a guy like Brad Lambert, who it's worth noting. Brad Lambert, we talk about him as a center. Brad Lambert did not play a whole lot of center in the second half of last season with the Moose. He was having a real struggle in his sophomore season with the Moose. They moved him to the wing. His numbers, his production ticked up. You know, and so you talk, let's assume Nikolai Ehlers is gone. And the Jets are having a tough time finding something to fill that void. Like in a perfect world, that's where a Brad Lambert would step in and as a winger in your top 6 and prove that he is ready and capable of taking on a bigger role. Now, is he? I don't know. He still only scored 7 goals last year in the A. But that's what you talk about in, you know, that internal competition, growth, development. The Jets could really use hitting on some of that draft and develop that saw so much of its core. But to be quite honest, in recent years, Huss, there hasn't been, you know, outside of Sandberg and Perfetti, there hasn't been a ton of draft and development success stories on a major level. And the Jets could really start to use some of that to come to fruition here.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Mike, you know, just quickly, Trevor Zegras was traded today.
Yeah.
And, you know,
and there wasn't a big price to pay for him.
No, it was Paling. It was a second rounder and I think a fourth rounder pick as well. Yeah. And I know there's some people that have said, you know, maybe that was a player that the Jets, you know, could have gotten in on. It just, I mean, from my perspective on Zegras, I mean, he's a guy that can be a good semi-productive player on a bad team. I don't know. Although it would be interesting to see him come into a locker room with a very good veteran core, solid leadership, expectations at a certain level and what he'd be able to do, because he has really been underwhelming based on the hype that he came with into his career with. But I will say that's sort of a player that might be undervalued based on what he's done the last couple of years, that might be a little younger, that might be under team control. Other players of the Zegras cut, if you will, I think might be something that the Winnipeg Jets will be kicking tires on over the course of the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, Rick Tockett's going to have field day with Trevor Zegras, although Joel Quenneville clearly didn't want to even have to deal with that. For folks saying, I already got a few of them, like messages, that price, the Jets should have been all over it. First of all, Trevor Zegras is cut from the same cloth as Rutger McGroarty. Trevor Zegras, I suspect, would not have wanted to come to Winnipeg. he's probably all about a big U.S. market, and I guess he has it now in Philly. He's also, there's some softness to his game, two-ply softness. So we'll see if the Flyers, he does not strike me as a prototypical Philadelphia Flyer, certainly not the Broad Street Bully version of the Flyers, but they're undergoing a bit of a revamp there. They got guys like Michkov, obviously, and we'll see what Rick Tocchet and company can do with him. But yeah, I mean, there's some teams out there that when they see the price that got paid for Zegras, they're probably thinking, and their fans are thinking, well, we could have used that. I just don't think there would have been a fit there for Winnipeg. But you're right. Another guy that got moved while we were at the WST party last week at the Goldeye game, Haas's Mason Marchment, who I'm sure Jets fans weren't exactly pining for, given his antics in the second round. Mason Marchment, I think, could be competing in the Olympic diving competition with the amount of times he flipped and flopped, not to mention slashed a referee in that series. But he's a big guy and he could play with some grit. I just think, and we heard, the details of that trade was that Jim Nill essentially did him a favor, trading him from one no-tax state to another so that he could get full value on his contract. So again, why weren't the Jets in on Mason Marchment? There's a cap dump. You think the Dallas Stars were going to trade?
Zero chance.
Yeah, like the Jets. I mean, if Kevin Cheveldayoff had called Jim Nill, he would have hung up on him.
The Avalanche, the Jets,
no,
the Blues, of those teams could have significantly increased that offer to Dallas, and they're not saying yes. No. That's my opinion, at least.
Agreed. So, I mean, those are just two examples because there have been two arguably top six forwards that have moved here for not huge prices, but I think the circumstances are pretty unique in Marchment and Zegras. But I will say this, Haas, if you're the Jets, and Kevin Cheveldayoff has done this sort of move in the past, like remember Michael Frolik and how he brought him in, and like there are times when you can make a shrewd move when you can find a team that is trying to either get out of a contract or change of scenery, whatever. And those are the kind of things that good teams need to find deals like that. And I'm sure he's looking.
Well, and the Jets' ability to do that is probably going to be somewhat dependent on whether they're adding another 8+
Correct.
To the cap.
Which is why this idea that Ehlers could circle back, later in the day on July 1, like to me, I just don't get that. I don't understand how, if you're the Jets, like you can't risk getting, like musical chairs, the music stops and now you don't have a chair. Like that's just not, you can't operate that way.
Mike, the way I see this happening, I mean, we all know that there's tampering that goes on. There's third parties that kind of get in. I mean, I think some of these conversations are going to happen over the course of this week if they haven't already. And they'll have a pretty good idea of the teams that are interested in his services and what they're willing to pay. And at that point, when they have some information, I think they put that up against the Winnipeg Jets offer, potentially with an 8th year, and make that decision. Because I'm sort of with you. I think if we get to July 1st, I think it's unlikely. And the team that really does worry me is the Hurricanes. In that, I know Frank Saravelli said that he reported that, Nick's looking at, kind of likes the smaller market and would like to stay in something like that. And when you look at what Carolina, first of all, the cap space that they have.
There's tons.
And I mean, that roster, I mean, you've got Aho, Svech, Jarvis, Kotkaniemi, not as big of a deal, but I mean, those players are signed long-term, 4 and 5 years. I mean, they'll have a pretty good idea about where his spot is. And then, of course, you got a guy like Jacob Slavin on the blue line.
And a coach like Rod Brindamore, like who guys seem to love playing for him as well. So, yeah, I mean, that's always made a lot of sense to me. Just one other quick thing, Huss, on the topic of July 1st. In the Marner camp, like I'm wondering, there's also reports that Mitch Marner may do some visits with teams, which indicates that he may not make his decision right away. To me, like, what's that going to do is that going to bottleneck the whole free agent market? Because again, and so does Ehlers sign before Marner?
Well, I guess if Marner wants a full dog and pony show to be the belle of the ball, and to make maybe he'll have a get the Boys and Girls Club of Toronto rented out. Maybe on like July 4th or something like that.
But I mean, imagine
the
if
decision 2.0.
If you're a team that has to hold back $13 million while waiting to see if Mitch Marner's picking you, are you waiting till July 2nd or 3rd till he makes up his mind? Because what's left at that point? Unless everything's left because nothing happens. Like it could be a day of nothing if everyone's waiting for Mitch Marner to get the ball rolling.
Well, part of that is the fact that it's such a slight and slim UFA class. And we've seen a number of guys go off the board already that have been re-signed. So it'll be an interesting week. What do you and Ken have cooking as we head into draft weekend?
Yeah, so I'm putting together a piece today kind of focusing on the Manitobans. Last year, Huss, there was just one Manitoban selected in the draft. That didn't even happen until the 5th round. That was a bit of a rough year, the class of 2024. But things look a lot more optimistic this week. There's 14 Manitobans that were on Central Scouting's final rankings, and a number of those guys are expected to be selected this weekend. Carter Bear, almost a guarantee that he's going to go in the first round at some point. Seen some projections have him as early as like 13. So I'm putting together kind of a preview looking first at the Manitobans, and then Kenny and I will do a deep dive later this week into some names, assuming the Jets keep the pick at 28. Who could they be looking at? What might be available as we go into that? And then, of course, we'll be all over the draft this weekend and development camp when it starts next Monday, and the Toews announcement and free agency. So, yes, lots of quantity and hopefully quality coming up here.
Appreciate it, Mike. Have a great one.
You bet. Enjoy the week.
All right, there's Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. By the way, speaking of Free Press, we have some breaking news. None other than my tag team partner on CFL 110. Jeff Hamilton will be in attendance and participating in the WST poker tourney. That is the qualifier for that finals, the Canadian finals for the Coolbet Poker Open. You can check my Twitter at Hustlerama. There's a tweet there with the details on how you get in. But stick around after we talk to Scott Wheeler. We'll give you the full rundown on that. Just before we bring in Scott Wheeler for a look ahead to the draft, big shout out to our friends at Royal Sports. They put out a tweet on the weekend already, sewing on the 19s to the Jets jerseys because Jonathan Toews is a Winnipeg Jet. Royal Sports, always your number one spot for your favorite Jet merchandise, Jet jerseys, Bomber merch, and more. And right now, they are stocked and good to go. If you want to be one of the first people on your block with the Jonathan Toews Jets jersey, number 19. Thank you, Gus, for abdicating the number. It is on right now at Royal Sports. Head on down there, and while you're at it, make sure to check out that massive bike section, their Yeti section as well, and so much more at the biggest and best sports superstore you'll find anywhere. 750 Pembina Highway, and make sure to check them out on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And of course, Thursday night, we've got Winnipeg Blue Bomber football. If you're not at Princess Auto Stadium, the next best place to be is watching the game on the big screens at your local Boston Pizza. Of course, we had such a great run through the Stanley Cup playoffs with that Boston Pizza playoff menu. Hopefully some of those treats are going to stick around. But in the meantime, 7 days a week, you can get the great taste of Boston Pizza in store, in the bar, and of course delivered by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. All right, Scott Wheeler's locked and loaded from The Athletic to talk a little draft. Before we do that, big cheers to our friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
Huge week in hockey. The draft goes in LA on the weekend. Scott Wheeler of The Athletic joins us to get ready for the pick. Scott, what's going on? It's great to have you back on Winnipeg Sports Talk. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is crunch time. This is the thick of it for me. This is the home stretch. So I'm looking forward to getting down in a couple of days to LA and spending the back half of this week and into the weekend in Los Angeles. Hopefully, in a climate down there that is in a better spot than it's been over the last month or so, particularly around where the draft is being held. Obviously, much bigger things going on there than a hockey draft and basically a pageant for 18-year-old kids. But no, really looking forward to the draft. Looking forward to sort of putting a bow on this class, and then we'll turn the page really quickly, and we'll be talking about Gavin McKenna before you know it.
I'm glad that you are heading down there. We've obviously done the draft as, pretty much every year, but with this year, it's just so different that we're not there. I mean, being the draft guy for The Athletic, you put so much into this, I think it makes sense. But let me just ask you, are you hearing, are we one and done with this Zoom format? Will we be back to normal a year from now, getting together for what really is the one true hockey convention of the year, with the exception of 2025?
Yes, I do think that decision has been made. I don't think the NHL is in a position to make any kind of announcement or even to put the question back to the NHL general managers that made the decision to go to decentralization in the first place. But I believe behind closed doors that is going to be the outcome here, that this is going to be one and done at the Peacock Theater in Los Angeles, and that we will be back to a centralized draft. If you remember, the big problem, and it was very hot at the time, but the big problem was that clubs had a huge issues getting out of Nashville a couple of years ago at the draft. And they felt, because of the travel headaches at the Nashville airport, big storm came into town. The Nashville airport is small in and of itself, and they couldn't get to where they needed to get to. General managers were doing their NHL free agency work by sort of airport lobbies, right? So that part of it, I think, was a major issue. I think as part of this next CBA, which sounds like it's in the home stretch here, as part of this next CBA, we're going to see all sorts of changes pertaining to signing rights for prospects, everything that's been tied indirectly or directly to the decision that the NCAA made on eligibility. And I think we also might see a shift, ever so slightly, a shift in the schedule that brings the draft, even if they can get it 1 or 2 or 3 days earlier, start the season 1 or 2 or 3 days earlier, finish it 1 or 2 or 3 days earlier. It just gives teams a little bit more wiggle room. And then the other ripple effect that I think will come out of this is that even as we move to a centralized draft moving forward, it is not, unfortunately for markets with small airports and small cities, it is not going to return to those cities. I think the NHL has made the decision that if they're going back to a centralized draft, that it will be in major hubs. It will be in places like Toronto and Montreal. It will be in places south of the border like Dallas. I think we're just Vegas again, potentially. I think we're going to see it at major airports, in and outs that are easy for the teams and all of the people involved. And we might start to see it in the same 7 or 8 cities over and over again, but I think they'd rather that than some of the headaches that come with hosting the draft in smaller markets. So I think that's the way that this is all trending.
Hey, Scott, you just mentioned the NCAA. I just got to quickly ask you before we dive into this year's class, and then, as you mentioned, Mr. McKenna, because it kind of does tie into this. Where are we at with all of the changes to NCAA hockey, and how is that in the short term, or maybe just in the medium term, going to affect CHL teams that have long been the number one producer of talent in the first round and in the National Hockey League draft?
Well, I think it's two-pronged. At the very front end of the quote-unquote pyramid, and I really do think that there's going to become a pyramid here for development in hockey, where kids naturally just progress. Instead of going directly from the CHL into the AHL, for example, kids are naturally going to have that middle step in between the AHL or the NHL and the CHL. And that will be, for many of them, college hockey at 18 or 19 years old. So in one sense, you're going to see a lot of the first and second round picks, a lot of the top kids who are coming out of the CHL make the decision to delay signing their entry-level contract into the NHL and make the decision instead to go to college and to spend a year or 2 or even 3 years in college. The ripple effect is that for small market CHL clubs, you're in many cases going to be losing the kids who sell the most tickets. The kids who sell the most tickets outside of the Bedards and the McKennas that get buzz before the draft, the kids in many of these markets that sell tickets are the kids who are tied to NHL clubs. I'm nearby Oshawa here, and people were much more interested in going to see Beckett Seneke or Ben Danford or Callum Ritchie after they had been picked in the first round of the NHL draft than they were in their draft year. So there's going to be a bit of a pivot that's required amongst CHL clubs in terms of marketing these kids before they're drafted and knowing that they'll be lucky to be drafted, or marketing the mid-round picks after they're drafted and trying to retain those guys. I think you will see teams increasingly go to their municipalities sort of with a handout saying, look, if you want us to be able to retain these kids, we need better facilities. There are already new rinks coming in many CHL markets in the next few years. I expect that you'll see more CHL markets go to their municipalities and ask for whether it's upgrades to their current facilities or new facilities, because otherwise there is no possibility for them to compete with the money and the facilities and the coaching that is being offered by NCAA programs. But at the flip side of that, this isn't all doom and gloom for the CHL. We have already seen a major counterflow of top 15, 16, 17-year-old kids who were forced to play in the BCHL or forced to play in the AJHL or forced to play in the USHL if they wanted to go the college route. Well, now we're seeing the flow of those kids back into the CHL. And in big numbers, we're seeing the flow of those kids back into the CHL. So what's going to take place is the CHL is going to be the predominant league in the world, even more so than it has been for the last 20, 30, 40 years, is going to be the predominant league in the world pre-draft. You're going to see more and more of the top kids at 16 and 17 top kids in the CHL. The challenge is going to be, after they're drafted, retaining them when they've graduated from high school and have the option to go the NCAA route. And that's going to be incumbent on ownerships in these leagues to step up. It's going to be incumbent on the actual staff within these teams, whether it's the coaches and the general managers, to really sell these players while they're there at 16 and 17 on why would you want to go to the NCAA when you could just stay here? If you're happy here, stay here. So there's going to be a give and take. I think you'll see kids go to the NCAA and struggle and find out that the NCAA is a much harder level than they realize, and then actually end up back in the CHL post-draft. So there's going to be kids coming and going. Parents and agents who already have a ton of power in this process now have even more power in this process, because if they're unhappy in one situation, they can jet to college for the winter semester, and they can use those things as pressure points in order to get power play time and all of these different things that these kids want these days. So a very complicated process. It's going to take years before we know just how many kids are going to sort of be a part of that exodus. There are still a lot of kids who have chosen to stay. I have heard that Porter Martone, for example, a top 5 pick in this draft, is going to stay in the CHL next year. Radim Murtka, one of the top defensemen in this draft, is going to stay in Seattle. His teammate, Braden Coots in Seattle, is going to stay in Seattle. So there are still, Kayshawn Aitchison in Barrie, by the sounds of it, is going to stay in Barrie. There are still lots of kids who have chosen to stay, but it's become a 50-50 thing where a lot of the first-round picks if they haven't already elected to go college, like Cole Reshney in this draft class, like Malcolm Spence in this draft class, like Jackson Smith in this draft class. Obviously, the big one that everybody's waiting on is Gavin McKenna. Those kids are going to increasingly go. The McKennas, the Fantillis, the Owen Powers, the Macklin Celebrinis, Landon DuPont of the Everett Silvertips in a couple of years. Kids that have really proven everything there is to prove in the CHL are going to go. But it's those middle kids that I'll be interesting to see how them and their families and their advisors sort of navigate it. Do you stay a little bit longer in the CHL and stay in a place that you're comfortable with your billet parents and all of that? Do you have the grades to get into college? So there's all sorts of layers. Harvard and UConn are very different academically as well, right? So there are different levels to this in terms of where kids can go, where they're going to be recruited based off where they're from. I would expect that a lot of the Boston kids will end up in the QMJHL now. A lot of the Massachusetts kids that are that feed into the NTDP in the US could end up in the QMJHL playing for some of the big English programs out there like Halifax and Moncton and St. John. So there will be winners and losers from this. I do worry about smaller markets having an even tougher time competing against London and Kitchener and Moncton and Halifax and the big markets, but that will all sort of sort itself out over time.
Hey, one other thing, just with the unique setup of the draft this year, is there seemed to be a lot more focus on the combine. I mean, you're there every year. How is the combine different this year as opposed to others?
Well, it was different because there were just more staff from NHL clubs there. Because of decentralization, the combine was used this year as sort of the gathering place for all of the people who are a part of the draft process. And it's always been like that. The directors and many of the amateur scouts are there, but teams were flying over their amateur scouts from Europe, which they don't always do, to bring them into Buffalo to be a part of the process. You're increasingly seeing people in sports science, in strength and conditioning, in video coaching and development. You're increasingly seeing development staff be a part of these conversations with these kids, rather than just the general manager and the directors of scouting. So it was definitely just a bigger deal in Buffalo this year from a pure mass standpoint of the number of NHL staff that were in town in Buffalo. It's always been big in Buffalo, and the combine's a huge thing every year. But this year in particular, there was an even bigger presence from NHL clubs.
Scott Wheeler's with The Athletic, joining us, looking ahead to this weekend's NHL draft. The Islanders won the draft lottery and had a big move up to number one. Listen, it's huge for an organization when you move up like that, but let me ask you this. How clear-cut is the number one pick, and how big of the drop-off is there from number one to that next category of players? Or is it really close in your mind?
No, it's done and dusted. I would be stunned if Matthew Schaefer weren't the first overall pick to the Islanders this Friday. I have not spoken really since November. I have not spoken with an NHL scout who doesn't think he's the best prospect out there. Now, I do know that there are scouts who believe that Michael Misa is close, if not right there with them, that Porter Martone or James Hagens aren't far behind. But Schaefer, as a number one defenseman, who is an elite skater, and I hate that word. I do not use it lightly, but Matthew Schaefer is a world-class skater, one of the best skating defensemen that I've ever watched at this age in terms of the way he gets up and down the ice. That plus the kid that he is, we were just talking about the combine. I think the combine helped to really strengthen it. He presents extremely well. I think he's going to be a captain in the NHL someday. I could even, and getting very, very far ahead of himself, I could even see him being a captain of like a Canadian Olympic team, for example. I think that's the kind of kid and player and person that we're talking about here. He carries himself unbelievably well for a 17-year-old kid. And on top of that, the player, forgetting all that, the player is first overall caliber. So really, really impressive kid and player, and I would be very, very surprised if it's not him number one.
Scott, you mentioned Michael Misa. He had a monster season in the OHL. Mm-hmm. Is he a clear-cut number two, or are there a number of players that will be vying to be that selection of San Jose?
Well, if you'd asked me that question coming out of the U18 Worlds and the end of Saginaw's playoff run in the OHL, at that time, the consensus among scouts was that Michael Misa is the best forward in the draft and, as a result, the second best prospect in the draft. Now, I've got my final mock draft coming out tomorrow, and I'll have more reporting on this. But now, Anton Frundell seems to really be in the conversation. If Anton Frundell doesn't go 2 to San Jose ahead of Michael Misa, I fully expect that he'll go 3 to the Chicago Blackhawks. Frundell actually didn't have a good U18 Worlds. He was borderline very disappointing there, albeit coming off of winning promotion with Djurgården from Hockey Allsvenskan into the SHL for next season and joining that team late, but just didn't look at that tournament like even James Hagens did a year ago or Porter Martone did a year ago within his own draft class. Wasn't even close, frankly, to the impact that those two players had at that event. But in Frundell, you've got a kid who was almost a point per game in Hockey Allsvenskan, produced in line with players like David Pasternak and William Nylander at the same age at that level. 6'1.5" center who's a big, thick, strong kid. And there are some in the scouting community that throw around people like Barkov and people like Kopitar as this sort of two-way center. I do not view Anton Frundell that way. I do not consider him that level of a prospect. He's 6th on my list. But there are some who believe that there's a real chance that he goes number 2 to the San Jose Sharks.
Scott, in these drafts, we often talk about tiers. Where is that tier after number 1, and how deep is it?
I sort of had 2 tiers at the top. So I had number 1 and number 2. I had Michael Misa actually in the same tier as Matthew Schaefer, albeit he was number 2 on my list and a clear number 2 on my list. But I did feel that there was a bit of separation with him and the other forwards in this draft class. I debated including him in that next tier. And then that next tier is sort of 2 to 6 for most people. And there are some who believe that Jake O'Brien, who I have 8th on my list, belongs in that top 6, top 7 tier, that he's in that same tier. There are others who believe that Brady Martin, who I have 10th on my list, is also in that tier. I would expect that Brady Martin goes 4, 5, 6, 7 in this draft class, even though I don't have him in my top 6, top 7 in this draft class and have him just below. But the next tier for me is really James Haggins of Boston College, 5'10.5" center, who is the U18 and U17 World Single Tournament points record holders and was the first-line center for Team USA when they won gold at last year's World Juniors. Porter Martone, who was also on Team Canada at last year's World Juniors but had a bit of a disappointing event, and then was very good in the front half of the season, one of the best players in the OHL and in the CHL in the front half of this season, and was just good, sort of took a bit of a step back in the second half before actually participating with Canada's men's team at Men's World Championships. Those are sort of 3, 4 on my list after Misa. And then Caleb Desnoyers of the Moncton Wildcats, 6'2" center, just under a shade under 6'2", but about a 6'2" center who was 65% in the faceoff circle this year, was one of the best players, if not the best player in the QMJHL this year, despite playing most of the season with 2 bad wrists that he might have work done on the summer on. QMJHL playoffs, MVP, QMJHL champion, long list of accomplishments, one of 3 players to ever win triple gold at U17s, the Hlinka Gretzky Cup and U18 Worlds. So that group, that sort of 3 to 6 for me is a strong group. I really like Martone. I really like Haggins. I really like Desnoyers. I'm a little bit lower on Frundell, but still can see why he's in that group. And then beyond that, you get into players like Brady Martin, like Jake O'Brien, like Victor Eklund, the younger brother of William Eklund of the San Jose Sharks. And then you get into that second tier of defensemen, whether it's Radim Murtka for you as the second best defenseman in the class behind Matthew Schaefer, or Jackson Smith, or Kayshawn Aitchison of the Barrie Colts. Those guys are sort of clustered right around 10, and we'll go. Each of those 3 defensemen will likely go kind of 8, 9 to 12, 13.
Scott, one player I have to ask you about that, we commonly see sort of in the towards the bottom of the top 10 is Wheaties center Roger McQueen. Monster player, 6'5", but had some big-time injury issues this year.
Yeah.
Is he the highest risk-reward pick in the draft? And just give us thoughts on him on the best-case scenario, but also what teams might be leery of when they make that selection.
Yeah, McQueen coming out of last season and the way that he played through the first game and a half at U18 Worlds before he got injured, he was viewed in this class. People were talking about this 6'5" center whose mobility was improving, who had legit skill on the puck, great hands, finesse, touch in tight around the net, the ability to play make. And you heard comparisons, and the comparison that he uses for himself is Ryan Getzlaf, but I heard more sort of, ironically, Blake Wheeler of the formerly of the Winnipeg Jets. And those were the kinds of players that were being tossed around. It's extremely hard to find that 6'4", 6'5" center in the NHL. There are teams that have made mistakes doing that even when they so there have been players over the years who've dealt with the back injury. There are players who've, like Gabe Velarde, who kind of navigated through it, although it took Gabe, and he still does deal with it a little bit. It took Gabe a long time. And then obviously Caden Lindstrom a year ago, drafted 4th overall to the Columbus Blue Jackets, dealt with back injuries that were viewed at the time as actually more serious than what McQueen has dealt with. McQueen's injury has flared up multiple times, though. So he said all the right things recently. At the Combine, he participated in the testing. He says that the back is good, that he misspoke a year ago when he said it was a herniated disc and that it was misdiagnosed and it's actually less serious than they originally thought. But even despite having said that, he has missed 3 different chunks of a year and a half, parts of 2 seasons. with the injury, and for an extended period of time each of the 3 times. So it has been an issue. It is something that teams are cognizant of. I still think he goes in the top 10, but I think he's more likely to go sort of 8, 9, 10 than he is to break through into that top 7.
Scott Wheeler's with us from The Athletic. The latest up at The Athletic is the NHL draft player poll. 50 top prospects dish on the most underrated, most difficult NCAA. Tell us about this, other than the fact that an opportunity to give 18-year-old kids that haven't even been picked an opportunity to take a shot at the fine city of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Scott.
Yeah, so really ambitious project that we tried to pull off for the very first time this year. Nothing like it, I don't think, has ever really been done, where we decided at the start of the year to try to put together a prospect poll for the 2025 NHL draft class, similar to what we produce with our NHL player poll and our MLB player poll and our NBA player poll and our NFL player poll, where we get, the goal was 50 and we hit 50 just on the button, just on the mark. The goal was to get 50 prospects to come up with 10 questions that we could ask them. We settled on 7 anonymous questions and 3 on the record questions. One of those anonymous questions, as you hinted at, was sort of NHL club or market that you'd most like to go to and least like to go to. The kids, I will give the kids credit. They were more, we knew it was going to be a difficult question, even with anonymity as part of it. And I'll give the kids credit. Only 19 of the 50 kids that we surveyed over the course of this season answered the least like to go question. But yes, as you sort of hinted at, 7 of those 19, the most common answer was the Winnipeg Jets. More than, I believe about 75%, I think it was 14 out of 19 of the answers were for Canadian markets as well. So kids have really prioritized warmer climates. I think they're thinking less about taxes and that side of it and thinking more about warmer climates. When you went to the most like to draft you section, you saw a lot of Dallas, a lot of Nashville, a lot of Tampa, a lot of Florida. And part of that's because those teams are good, but I think part of that is just kids wanting to go to the warmer climates. So not a huge surprise, but I was surprised that 6 of the 7 Canadian kids, even amongst just 19 responses, 6 of the 7 Canadian markets drew answers from that. So a clear challenge, a clear indication at least. And that's kind of the goal was of this project and of that question specifically, was to get some trends and some real takeaways. And I do think it is a real takeaway that Canada is going to continue to maybe face a tougher time than some of the major American markets in attracting these players. And part of that's, Winnipeg's a part of that. But I think it was not a surprise to me that 6 of the 7 Canadian markets were amongst the 10 teams that got answers in the least likely. And I do think it's notable that 14 out of the 19 answers went to Canadian markets.
Biggest week of the year for you guys in the draft game. You mentioned the mocks coming out tomorrow. Fill us in on what else you guys have cooking at The Athletic as we get ready for the picks to be called on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, my final mock will be tomorrow. That is packed full with insights from sources on where teams are leaning and what's going to happen on draft night. I think I have a really good grasp on the way that the top 12 is going to go this year. I think I have a really good grasp even sort of into the late teens. And then there are several picks sort of late first, early second round that I think I've got a good handle on as well. There's a bit of guessing in there towards the end. We do a top 64 for my final mock, so we expand it from 1 round to 2 rounds. And later it's more about preference, but there are some players in there that I've heard linked to certain teams and that kind of a thing. So that's out tomorrow, and then I'll have sort of my final column on draft day, sort of a final what I'm hearing, what to expect tonight kind of thing. And then on draft day, it's grades. We grade all 32 draft classes, and that's obviously a big lift for us at The Athletic here. And I'm really looking forward to getting into who actually picks who, and then turning the page to Gavin McKenna in 2026. And I don't think it will be long before we hear Gavin McKenna's decision on college for next fall.
Hey, just quickly, McKenna at this age, he seems to be a complete phenom. I mean, is he up there with some of the best draft prospects we've seen in the last couple decades?
On talent, yes. In terms of the way he skates, the way he thinks the game, puck skill, the ability to play make, he is an elite grade in all of those areas. Grades right up there with whether it's Celebrini or Bedard or Ivan Demidov, the most talent, Matvei Michkov, the most talent, Adam Fantilli. You pick a player from the last 5, 6, 7 drafts, Bedard included. I think on a talent standpoint, Gavin McKenna is right there with them. The differentiator between McKenna and, say, a Celebrini is that McKenna's a winger. And I do think that is a part of the conversation for teams. Ideally, a truly generational first overall pick is a centerman. That's not just me saying that. That's the way that NHL teams view these players. So I think because he's not a center, that he maybe gets a slight tick below the Matthews and the Celebrini and the Bedards, the true sort of defining first overall picks that have come through the draft in the last decade. Obviously, McDavid is McDavid. He exists in an echelon all his own and did at the time as well. But I think he's every bit as talented as any of the other players that have come through the draft in recent memory. I could see him winning the Hobey Baker as a true freshman in college next year and having a 60 or 70 point season like Celebrini and Fantilli did in their freshman years. I think that's the kind of talent that we're talking about. I think he's going to completely change an organization. If there's anything to nitpick with Gavin beyond the fact that he's a left wing, the only other thing is maybe that he does have some work to do to get into the gym and get stronger. He's a pretty lean, wiry kid still. And Celebrini at the same age was not that. Fantilli at the same age was not that. They were big, strong, thick kids already. So I think that's part of the college decision for him when he makes it will be sort of, do I want to get into the gym and spend more time in the gym in college and play fewer games? And I think that'll be a big part of it. But he's a phenomenal talent. He's going to be the story of the draft next year. He's going to light it up at the World Juniors and be all over our TV screens over the holidays in St. Paul, Minneapolis for the 2026 World Juniors. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's playing with whatever program he decides, if he's playing at the end of next season in the Frozen Four and sort of leading college hockey and scoring. Like I don't think that's out of the question for him, even as a teenager.
Scott, have a great week. Travel safely. We'll miss you at the draft, but hopefully we'll get the entire hockey world back together in 12 months from now. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, cheers. Looking forward to it.
TheAthletic.com, Scott's mock draft tomorrow and continued draft coverage all week through the first picks on Friday. All right, great stuff from Scott Wheeler. Plenty more draft coverage heading into the weekend all this week here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. I saw Schnitzy and some of you talking about the poker tourney tonight. Yes, we are back. It is our June edition of the WST Poker Series tonight at Coolbet, 8:30 p.m. We're getting going. If you have not already played with us, what you're going to want to do is go to coolbet.com and then click on poker and download the poker software, the poker app. And then once you go in there, you'll click on tournaments. And then there's a little magnifying glass. If you just put in WST beside that, boom, the WST poker attorney will pop up. Special night tonight, because in addition to the usual, playing with all of our friends, the top 2 people that finish tonight will get a ticket for the finals, the Canadian finals, where the winner will be going to Estonia for the Coolbet Open. Pat was on the program last week breaking it down. An incredible trip. And as someone that, we had a Lock Shop winner win the trip to Costa Rica for the Costa Rica Poker Open. Of course, I was there. And it was just absolutely phenomenal. And this one being somewhat of a home game for our friends at Coolbet, I know it'll be big. So join us tonight, 8:30. If you have any issues, you can DM me at Hustlerama. We'll walk you through it, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And Zach Schnitzy, who has been in a number of the tourneys before, was saying he was hoping to play, but he works till 8:30. It starts at 8:30, but if you come by at 8:45 or 8:50 or 9, you will be able to get in for the first hour with late registration. So if you can't be there right at 8:30, don't worry about it. You want to make sure you're the last man standing, not necessarily the first one. So tonight, Coolbet, WST Poker Series. Hope to see you all there tonight. Hammers in. There's a $100 bounty on myself and Michael Remis if you take one of us out. And we've had so much fun. So you're all invited. Let's do it up. It should be a lot of fun. See you tonight. We'll get to the Coolbet lines in a minute. Shout out to our friends at the Gold Eyes. Man, we had a great time at the ballpark last Thursday. Thanks to everybody that came out. And a nice weekend for the Gold Eyes. They win their 4th straight series and now hit the road for a quick 3 games away, and then they're back at it on the weekend right through the beginning of next week. So long weekend, Canada Day. Should be a lot of fun around the ballpark. 982 base or goldice.com for tickets for the upcoming homestand. And let's get to our Breezy Bend golf report. This sort of does tie in to Coolbet. Not to Barry Horowitz myself too much, but I did get lucky. Hammer and I, who making our picks on CFL 110, did them on Tuesday. I thought that Drew Brown was starting. I picked Ottawa. By the end of the week, I was feeling Calgary, but I'd already bet Ottawa, and I went 4-0 against the spread. We cashed the CFL 110 parlay. I parlayed those 4 picks. But then, speaking of golf, Keegan Bradley, birdie on 18. Tommy Fleetwood, love Tommy, but that was an ugly choke. Bradley comes through, 40-1 ticket on that, and Patty and I hit our Sunday Sweat Club with Nick Taylor top Canadian and Keegan Bradley top 20. So it was an unbelievable week for me personally. And how about Keegan Bradley, who's now firmly in the mix to be on the Ryder Cup team and not having to pick himself as a playing captain? Great stuff. Pat will join us on Wednesday, and we'll get in our picks for this week in the PGA Tour, and I'll hopefully make you some money like we did last week over at Coolbet. You want more information on Breezy Bend, breezybend.ca, or give Corey Johnson a call about getting on the waiting list over at Breezy. And we will see you at Breezy in August for the Manitoba Open. Listen, before we get to everything, I know we've been spending a lot of time talking hockey, but I want to get to the why not question of the day for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. That is, what did you think about the Bombers' 2-0 start? And specifically your thoughts on the weekend. We had a great chat with Josh Frey-Sam earlier, who said, the score was nice. I mean, all aspects of the team did some really good things. But as we heard from Mike O'Shea, still some work to be done. So let us know in the chat for the why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. We're going to, we'll get to our Coolbet lines, and we got to get to our ASD picks as well. But let's quickly get to a little fan feedback brought to you by Fans First, your number one spot for buying and selling Winnipeg tickets on the resale market, where what you see is what you pay. No fees, no added fees at all. And good news, especially as we're gearing towards another sellout for the Bombers. Bomber tickets on Fans First right now. So if you got an extra pair you're looking to sell, use Fans First. If you're looking for a pair of last-minute tickets, another great spot to go if you can't get them from the club. Again, fansfirst.ca. Some really interesting comments coming out of the draft conversation that we had. Julian Labossiere, McKenna is going to drive a team from the wing. Super rare a guy can do that. I think he's so phenomenal. Cannot wait. Next year, we'll be talking nonstop about that guy going into next year's draft. And Rob Mahoney, going back to 2011. Mark Scheifele, the second highest score from his draft class. And 2011 was a pretty good draft. In Scheifele, we trust. And Darth Skater mentioned in redrafts, Scheifele goes second after Nikita Kucherov and Eric Charlofson. Whoa, the juniors, World Juniors are in St. Paul? That might be worth the trip. And then popping down Schnitzy, Bombers 2-0, baby. Alrighty then. And Nicholas, nice start, 2-0, and be done with BC so early in the season. Plus, the Bombers now have the tiebreaker. Absolutely. Keep your fan feedback coming at all times in the chat. It's brought to you by Fans First, by fans, for fans, no fees. All right, Remo. Well, listen, we'll wait a minute to get to our horse picks for tonight. But let's get over to Coolbet. As I log this up, I just keep logging in to see the balance after such a great one. I did see somebody else jumped on the somebody else was in with me on Keegan Bradley. Just looking at that, I can't believe I've just missed that. Was it Johnny Bender? Yeah, Johnny Bender, there it is. Cash that Keegan Bradley ticket as well. My Coolbet account is stacked right now. That's what we like to see. And Schickster says, I always wonder on how much Huss actually places on a bet. Pretty much for anything I give out on the show, I usually bet 25 or 20 on. So like all the Sunday Sweat Club, the CFL 110 parlay, all of those ones I usually put 25, sometimes 30 or 40 if I really like it. Maybe it's a shorter parlay. And then for my golf outrights, I'll usually put anywhere from 10 to 25 on, depending on how long of a shot it was. The Keegan was 20. So the $20 at 40 to 1 paid $8.20. So yeah, it was very, very nice. We're looking good over the course of, hopefully we'll keep the heater going into Wednesday when Pat and I make some more golf picks. But right now, we don't have any NBA or any NFL anymore. Waiting for CFL lines to jump up. The only one that we have right now is the Bombers and Elks. And the Bombers open as 9.5-point favorites against Edmonton. Dusty asked me what I thought it would be. I was thinking 7.5 to 8. But bookies high on the Bombers right now, not so much with the start at 0-2 for Edmonton. So Bombers 9.5-point favorites, totals 50.5. And Bombers minus 500 on the money line. As far as the Grey Cup odds right now, the Alouettes are the favorite at plus 275, and the Bombers and the Riders are next up, co-favorites in the West at plus 375. Toronto, despite their ugly start, plus 625. BC 10 to 1. Ottawa plus 1050. Stamps 11 to 1. Ticats 20 and Elks 30. Right now for the Grey Cup. We've got quite a bit of Major League Baseball action today. I guess I should have maybe put this in for the combo cards, but I did take the Reds over the Yankees. We are going to take the Mariners over the Twins, and I like the Cardinals at home against the Cubs. Those three picks get you plus 605, and actually another version of that is take out the Reds, add in the Yankees, and the Padres, also like the Padres as well. That's about plus 452. Soccer tomorrow, Canada playing El Salvador in the Gold Cup. Canada, big favorites, minus 556, 2-goal favorites. I'm really hoping we get, and I think we will get a roster a little more like game number one, and something that will be a little more consistent moving forward. And hopefully Jesse Marshall will be back. Hopefully we'll have Brendan Dunlop on the program tomorrow with somebody to talk about that as well as the Gold Cup continues. Everything else up right now, the FIFA World Cup Club Challenge is up right now. And by tomorrow, when we do CFL 110, after tomorrow's show, we should have all the rest of the lines up for the rest of the Canadian Football League. Again, if you haven't played a Coolbet before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. And if you just jumped in late, tonight, 8:30 p.m., the latest edition of the Winnipeg Sports Talk Poker Series. Special event tonight because the top two finishers are going to get that ticket to the final of the Coolbet Poker Open qualifier and could win an amazing trip overseas to represent us in Canada in the Coolbet Poker Open. It's going to be great. We will see you then. Check my Twitter at Hustlerama for the details on just going to Coolbet, downloading the poker, and then put in WST in the search in tournaments. You'll find it, enter it. We'll see you there. $100 bounty on myself and on Michael Remis. All right, Reem, you must be pumped because you have some work to do to catch me in our season-long race. But as we've seen last year, you were up on a couple $100 by me, and then I had the miracle $1,100 hit on a $1 bet at the end of last season to win running away. I've had a nice start, but there is lots of time. But this week, we get 3 days of live racing because they're at it tonight, tomorrow, and Wednesday at Assiniboia Downs.
Yeah, Monday race day. You mentioned watching the poker. I'll have ASD on YouTube. I
can't wait. It's going to be great tonight.
I got multiple TVs, so I'm watching whatever game on the main TV. I always make sure to throw YouTube on the side TV and get a shot at the races there. So I'm down like 200 to you. You had a big winner. I had an okay day last race day. I was up like $6, and I was like, oh, sweet. I hit my first two, and then you hit a big one for $50.
We're both up for the year, which is saying something. I mean,
I'm not quite up. I'm barely down, but you're
right at the even.
I guess combined, if you combine all of our picks, we're up.
Yep, definitely.
If you combine them, I'm doing okay. So, we'll see. What day is it today? June 23rd.
Today is June 23rd. We have 7 live races beginning at 7:30. I'm on race 2, 5, 6, and 7. What about you?
I have 2, 4, 6, and 7, and I'm trying to hit some big winners today on the few trifecta boxes.
What are you cooking for race 2?
I just did. This was my like chalk pick. I did 2, 4 exacta box. Actually, this wasn't totally chalk. Sorry, Mikko Maki is 7-1. That's actually a bit of a longer shot with the favorite Market King.
Yeah, Market King is crazy. I did a $2 exacta box with Market King and number 5, Mr. Dazzle, for $4.
Yeah, so we're kind of on the same page. There. I have 4, and you have 5, 6, and 7 now?
Yeah.
So on 4, I have... What do I have? Oh, yeah, 5, 6, 7 trifecta box. So I got the 2 favorites, Bubbly Talkin', Tree Hugger, and then Zippy Season instead of Horse 2. So I got
Zippy.
So I got Bubbly Talkin', Tree Hugger, Zippy. So 2 of the favorites and a longer shot. That's kind of that's your formula, Huss. I'm taking a page out of your book.
That has been the formula, and it's been pretty good. Race 5, I'm just going to throw $4 on number 2, Poderoso Ecus, to win with my guy, Antonio Whitehall, on the ride. So number 2 to win in race number 5. What do you got in 6?
I do have an exacta box 2, 3. This was my chalk one. Well, I guess not totally. Marvelous Lady's the big favorite, but Island High and JJ's American Diva finished 1, 2. I mean, they're the part of the program selection, so hopefully they can pull it off.
I had a really tough time, and I don't think this is going to pay much at all if it comes in. I had a tough time trying to find one of the other horses to stick in the triactor, so I just chalked it up. 2, 3, 4, $1 triactor box, probably win it's a $6 bet. It'll probably win like $7.50 or something if I win. But hey, better than losing it. Looks like they're going to come in heavy favorites, and then race number 7.
Yeah, and something sometimes we make these bets and the lines you make them at 3:30 or 3 o'clock, and the lines do change.
Oh yeah,
towards race time. So it is interesting to see how that works out. Race 7, I've got another try here. 1, 2, 7. Jamming Eddie, Orcadian Storm, and Fast Traffic. Okay, this was the same as the program.
Yeah, those are the program selections. I'm similar to that, but I didn't want to do the program selections again like I did last race. So I'm taking Fast Traffic, the favorite, at number 7. I'm taking Orcadian Storm. And I'm going to take a flyer on number 5, Argentina Cries. So 2, 5, 7, that's where I'm cooking. $1 tractor wheel, $6 bet. There's my 20 for today. And if you haven't played or you'd like to, check it out. I mean, best spot to do is go down to the Downs and take it in. Do the Downs, as they say. But if you can't make it, you can watch it on YouTube, and HPI Bet is the site you're looking at, where we make all our plays for Assiniboia Downs. And, of course, you can play tracks around the world as well. Went a little long today, but fun show. Great weekend. And obviously, Remo, getting into a pretty exciting week, certainly for hockey fans. And, of course, we've got the Bombers and Elks Thursday night. So a quick turnaround for the Blue and Gold after their second win of the season in as many starts.
Yeah, draft week's always fun. We'll see if we have any more trades. We did have the one today, the Zegras trade, not exactly on par with the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade at this channel, which happened 2 years ago. And it was this time last year, we made our way down to Vegas, and we did have the one day we ever missed a show because our flight got canceled.
That's right.
And we had to come back the next, went to the airport and went home and had to come back. It was horrible. And Scott mentioned the trouble getting out of Nashville. We did experience that a couple years ago too, where a flight was delayed over and over, and you saw everyone from the draft at the airport. So I am curious what the future of the draft is, but we will enjoy this one-off celebrity
We'll be back
draft
next year. We'll be back next year. And yes, getting back from Nashville was tough. I mean, I spent 3 extra days in Vegas trying to get home last year. So I still think the Vegas travel snafu with WestJet and that strike still takes the cake.
The WestJet.
Like you drove to LA and then flew back. You had the worst.
I had to get home. It was Canada Day. I listened to SiriusXM's coverage lying down on a bench in the Chicago airport. And yeah, I was there for a while. It was, I don't know, it was a fun experience. And shout out to...
You did that. I had a fun experience as well. I spent 3 extra days in Vegas. I did a free agency update from the Lazy River at the MGM, and I got to see Caitlin Clark play for the Indiana Fever against the Aces. We got to talk more WNBA, I think. Like, I'm getting sucked into this with all the drama and everything around it, and she's so much fun to watch. It's not surprising that there's more and more people paying attention to the WNBA right now.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned you went to that game. I was thinking of you yesterday because I turned the game on. It was Fever at Aces last night. Like, do they just play in Vegas the same time every year?
That'd be about just a few days earlier. Yeah. And when Caitlin Clark shows up, they move the venue. Normally they play at the Thomas and Mack Center, but when the Fever are there, it's T-Mobile time, and that place is full again.
Yeah, so I am invested in the Caitlin Clark drama. I don't know why everyone in the league hates her. I don't understand it, but it is make for entertainment. So we are in the summer months. As you mentioned, no NHL, no NBA. There is baseball on, CFL, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and some Sundays. There's stuff on. Golf.
Yeah, well, and the Ehlers extension watch.
Yes.
The hopeful Ehlers extension watch continues. We'll be all over that tomorrow. Cabela's, shout out to SGA. Damn right. We hit that right off the top of the show. What a season. Like the greatest season ever. And Steve Nash has 2 MVPs. But regular season MVP, finals MVP, champion, leading scorer, NBA first team. Going to be tough to beat him for the Northern Star Award this year, I think. Mr. Gilgeous-Alexander. That is going to do it for us. Man, we went long today. 3:30, 8:30 tonight. Poker tourney. I hope to see you all there. Again, coolbet.com. Click on poker, download the poker, and then go into tournaments. There's a little magnifying glass, a search thing. Put in WST, and we will look to seeing you there. $100 bounty on Remis's head and mine. And keep your eye out for Hamilton, Jeff Hamilton, who is short side snipe in the chat. Going to be a lot of fun. Hope to see you there tonight, folks. If not, make sure you join us tomorrow live, 1 p.m. right here on YouTube for a Tuesday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk. We'll see you then. Have a great one.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.